You get it out to YouTube and I'll do it after it's up and going.
I'm sure why the TV started playing.
How about the overhead projector?
See, it's
Yeah.
Master. Figure. Well, if it's changed, if it's gonna, if that's gonna be the final figure then. That close. Getting closer.
We're good.
All right. Okay. Like to call this Greeley County Supervisors meeting to order. And welcome, everyone. I'd like to begin by asking Supervisor Campbell to lead us in the pledge.
Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Thank you.
Went to our business call to the public. I have a couple here.
Are those agenda item slips? I think those pertain to agenda item slips.
Okay,
There may be people who wish to address uncalled
yeah,
public.
comment on number 13 and the consent agenda. Okay. All right, anyone out there have anything to say? Call to the public? Go ahead, Jojo.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Joanne Cathcart Lawrence, the assessor for our county. And I have the privilege to say that my chief deputy, Pam Willie, Brandy Alvarez, and Ashley Crandall, we all went to the ACO conference. Brandy and Ashley joined us later in the conference because first time we have been awarded a summit award from ACO. We're very, very excited. Can't tell you how much we love our property owners, and we're all here to help. The project that we received the award for was for civic engagement and public information. And it's for our Project CARE, which stands for Community Awareness Tax Relief Effort. And it came about, it was kind of conceived and born through the process of getting the exemption for veterans. Yes, I'm sorry. And so we took that and we ran with it. And it wasn't me, it was my staff that, they took that the new exemption for the veterans, and we ran with it. And not only did we want to get the word out just for the veterans, we wanted to get the word out for widows, widowers, disabled, and the veterans. And so that's where Project CARE came from. So we did share it with ACO, in which they vote on it, and which our county won the awards. So we're very, very excited and happy, and I'd like to share it with you all, if that's okay.
Great. Good.
We're mighty proud.
I was there, and this is an indication of the work that your office does, Jojo, and we applaud you for that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well deserved.
I always say that I have the best office. Just say it again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody else?
No, I think Gail wants to talk to Colin in public.
That's right. I think she does. I'll ask her.
Jean Swanison with the engineering department. And I just wanted to let you all know that the AmeriCorps project that we had last year for doing the rock dams on the Franklin Duncan watershed area. The concept form for that, for doing it again this year, was accepted, and we've been invited to apply. The application is due January 31st, but it has been submitted already because I wanted enough lead time since I'm going to be gone quite a bit. We have expanded some of the things, some expanded potential lodging that Lazy Bee is offering. So we'll see how that all works. But first and foremost, I probably want to thank both the IT department, Carolyn with the Board of Supervisors for scanning things, and Lydia in the treasurer's office for doing the same thing. It was really kind of a team effort to get the application form filled out, and I'll find out today whether the person who's filling in is in there all right. And Supervisor Warren, I wanted to welcome you, and I will fill you in on all this project and the things we have done with it. If and when it does get accepted, we'll know middle of March.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Gene. Okay. Anyone else?
Did you?
Okay. Yeah, you're on for item number 13, but you
I
did
am.
want to speak to call
I
to the
did.
public.
Yes, I did both.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah.
State your name.
So I'm Gail Hackney. I'm from Duncan. I'm fifth generation in Greenlee County. So, and just to let you know, we have a lot of very angry people in Duncan right now. We were all supposed to get emails that they were talking about the fairgrounds today. None of us have gotten those emails. We are not being asked to participate like we were supposed to be. And so we're a little upset. That's just part of it. The rest of it, we would like to participate in the design. It does belong to the whole county, to everybody. And we all need to be in there. We use it. We use it on a weekly basis. So you need our input. And that includes all the livestock people, all of the people who are the baseball people. Yeah. We participated in a meeting. We made sure we gave them our emails. So I got about 40 phone calls last night.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Derek, can you follow up? Yeah. Follow up.
So I will follow up, and by way of responding to the concerns, this was primarily to bring the board back up to speed from where we're at. We've not done anything really since our meeting. We've had a couple of internal meetings, but the holiday season, we've not been trying to keep anybody out of the loop. We're simply starting with you, the decision makers, but we'll absolutely follow up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move into our next, oh, anybody else? Is there anybody else out there?
Good morning, gentlemen. Jim Sproles from down in Duncan. I'm a relatively newcomer around here, only 23 or 4 years. I'm part of a group that is concerned about what's happening at the fairgrounds and what we'd like to do. We'd like to have the arena not necessarily reconform, but be sure that what we're doing there, what we'd like to do is get the arena in such a shape that we can have more rodeo type events that should bring money into the county. It needs to be set up in a way that I've been associated with things like this for over 50 years with horses. It needs to be set up in a way that exhibitors that come in like the way it's set up, as if they don't, they're not going to come back. And to attract things like that, rodeos, ropings, barrel racing on a larger scale than what we do as a local thing, we need to have an arena that's set up specifically for those things. The one that works now, what we have now is very workable, but on a, I don't want to say amateur scale, but on a lower scale. If you get more people that are more interested, I'd say more professional ropers, things like that, we need to have things set up in a way that will be welcoming to them. It's safe for them, safe for their animals, so forth. And in that way, we'd like to have more input into exactly how we get this thing set up so that we have something that we can, if it doesn't happen today or tomorrow, we, as the county grows and we grow around here, we have a facility that can accept that growth and that will encourage the growth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But Derek, I know that that is our plan and but if I
Right.
follow up,
You bet.
follow up that would be cool.
Anybody else? Wishes to speak? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go into our next item of business, the Public Health Service District. The Board of Supervisors will convene as the Board of Directors of the Greeley County Public Health Service District and will reconvene as the Board of Supervisors following the consideration of this item.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as listed.
Second that motion.
Motion has been made and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, so ordered. We will now reconvene as the Board of Supervisors and we will go into our next item of business, Flood Control District. Board of Supervisors will convene as the Board of Directors of the Greeley County Flood Control District and will reconvene as the Board of Supervisors following consideration of this next item, consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as listed.
I second that motion.
Motion has been made and second. I call, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, so ordered. Now reconvene as the Board of Supervisors, and I entertain a motion for public hearing.
I so move to be adjourned into public hearing.
Second that motion.
Motion has been made and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, so ordered. This item is a request by Clint Pentros to change the zoning district of parcel number 300-83-015 from TR-9. Transition minimum lot area 9,000 square feet to MR-A. Multiple household residential minimum lot area per dwelling unit 3,000 square foot. This item received unfavorable recommendation from the commission. Is there anyone out there that wishes to speak on this topic?
Morning, everybody. My name's Clint Petros.
Morning.
So yeah, I have that lot next to my house. I'd like to change to multi residential. To put a fourplex on it. And then want you to read it?
Can I ask a question? So you're talking four individual apartment units?
It'd be one building, with 4 units.
And has question is, the health department, as far as the septic capability, because it would be a septic system, has that been
So
defined?
that'll come later in the process. There's codes that we have to follow for all of that. So there'll be a perk test done on the soil to make sure before building, all that stuff. Just because we're changing zoning doesn't mean later on that it's not gonna qualify for other reasons.
Right.
Correct.
So you are planning to be flexible, the those plans change.
Yes.
Based upon the requirements from the health department.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, then we'll move into our next item of business.
You'll have to just
Once-
close public hearing.
Closing down public hearing and moving into our next item of business. Reed Larson, County Engineer. Discussion and action regarding request by Clint Pentros to change the zone in district of parcel number 383-015 from TR-9, transition minimum lot 9,000 square feet to MR-A, multiple household residential minimum lot area per dwelling unit 3,000 square foot. This item received an unfavorable recommendation from the commission. Floor is yours, Reed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and gentlemen. I don't have a whole lot to add, just point out that there are some similarities between this rezone request and some that you heard not too long ago. There in Loma Linda, the Hardcastle.
Daniels, I think.
Daniels, correct. So from our office's point of view, our concern would be the one that was raised by Supervisor Campbell, and that is there enough room on that lot for on-site disposal? Yeah, Mr. Petroff is proposing.
Chairman, can I ask Mr. Larson a question? I see that there was unanimous disapproval. Do you know what did the P and Z Commission elucidate their reasons for recommending a non-approval?
They were concerned about the lot size
Size?
relative to on-site disposal. And so Mr. Petros's lot size is, I think, 0.25 acres, quarter of an acre. Ms. Daniels' lot size was 0.29 acres, slightly larger. And the Hardcastle lot, it was one that had been combined. So it was substantially larger at about half an acre.
Cause wasn't there, Reed, wasn't there 3 lots over there? On the ones you're describing?
I think the Hardcastle lot was combined into.
Oh, and
one.
combined into one and then the other ones.
Yeah.
There's only 2, okay. All right, yeah.
Mr. Petros's 2 lots?
No.
It's just one.
Okay. Thank you, Reed. Well, I entertain for motion on this item here.
Well, I move that we approve of the request by Quentin Pentros to change the zoning district of parcel number 300-83-015 from TR9, minimum lot area of 9,000 square feet, to MR8, multiple household residential, minimum lot area per dwelling unit 3,000 square feet. With the stipulation that it meets the guidelines of on-site disposal, through the health department.
I second that motion, as long as it follows the guidelines of the health department, following those regulations.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask a clarifying question. On the previous request, the board put a stip on it as to the number of dwelling units. You may or may not want to do that, but I wanted to simply raise it to the board's attention.
I believe that was a triplex, no greater than,
On the previous one's correct.
right? Is that right, Reed?
Yes.
But this, I think I would leave it to whatever the health department feels.
It's doable.
It's doable based on the, the on-site disposal capability.
Okay,
Just want to make sure we didn't.
So,
all right.
I know.
So that's been included. Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
okay. All right, well, motion has been made and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, unanimous. Okay. We'll move into our next item of business. Austin Adams, HR Director, floor is yours.
Good morning, it's Austin Adams, HR Director. So today I was going to go over a 4-day work week. I'm going to go ahead and share a presentation here. Let's see. So 4-day work week. So when we discussed this 4-day work week, we brought it up a couple of years ago here to the board. At the time we kind of had mixed stakeholder buy-in on who was interested and not interested in that. Since then, we have went and revisited. So right now the elected officials support, this is the elected officials who support this schedule. This schedule would be a 4-10s Monday through Thursday, 7 to 5 is how the schedule is set. With this, I just want to point out, each of these offices have the ability to change their schedule on their own, right? They could change their operating hours without buy-in from the board. I want to say that I applaud them for wanting to do this as a team, right? They want this to be a family where everybody is doing it. They don't want somebody left out. Where we have services here and not here, or we have mixed up schedules. So I very much applaud them for wanting to do this as a team to make sure everybody's on the same page. So we do not have, somebody shows up there to the treasurer's office and the recorder's closed. Which again could happen, and I applaud them for not choosing to do it that they want to do this as a team. So I definitely appreciate that. We went and had an employee survey. We had 78 in favor and 22 that did not favor. Those are typically, from my experience, that's what I've seen. That 80-20 is a pretty fair mix. So when we go to the next slide here. So these would be the hours of operation. So hours of operation will be Monday through Thursday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Holiday weeks, those hours would expand. The statute requires so many hours on a holiday week. And so it would be 7 to 6 on holiday weeks. One of the things to remember with the Superior Court is managed through AOC, so Administration of Courts. Their schedule would retain the same. They are mandated to go 5 days a week by AOC. As far as our schedule goes, when we look at this, to remember this is overreaching operation hours of the county. So this would say, well, these are when the doors are open. Schedules within that may be different or altered according to the needs of each department. Majority of them, again, the anticipation of this is try to get to a 4-day week. But again, you saw there was 22% that did not favor. Some of those will be able to work different schedules within their departments. In order to still meet the needs that they have. Again, each department, that is up to them to decide. If you guys have questions as we go through, please feel free to let me know. Similar in the community of who are on a similar 410 schedule, just kind of an informational here. These are the other people similarly situated to us, other entities that are currently running a similar schedule. So one of the things we talked about with this is really getting this communicated out. So again, if this is moving forward on this, it would be getting Facebook posts out, newspaper ads, getting the website. One of the big things would be starting to get signage. So we'd have temporary signage up saying that the change is coming, and then we would have to go back through and we'd replace our permanent signage to do that. Within some of this communications, I've met with the courts. It would be how that lockup procedure goes, what some of the maintenance aspects look like. If they have a jury trial, we may need extra staff here on that day for a jury trial if it goes into a Friday. So again, I think with this, there'll be some of those pieces, but really trying to communicate as best we can so we can fix issues before they become issues. Benefits. So this is an interesting one. So I look at this, retention is it's a big one. We can't always compete with, especially the mine on where our prices are. But retention, we can do schedules and we can be flexible on that. Definitely helps, right? We're usually very flexible with games, doing those kind of things. I think this very much will help with that. Also recruitment, getting people to come down, knowing that extra day is there's also very helpful. Like I said, my anecdotal experience, that 80-20 is pretty common across the board. There's some studies out there you can look at that talk to that and really do show help with recruitment as well as retention. Now, the last one I have, building expenses. I put it on there knowing that this is probably not going to be a major factor, right? Every study that you look at, it's kind of marginal, right? You're not going to see a lot of expenses. Technically, there'll be less people pulling down power on Fridays, but it's probably marginal enough that we probably won't really see a big bang for the buck. I just wanted to include it on there because a lot of people like to talk about that. I would not base the decision based on building expenses.
Less traffic.
Yeah, it is less traffic, yes, but
On that note, one of the things that is a little wrinkle in this, the Superior Court is subject to rules by the Arizona Supreme Court, and they are required to be open 5 days a week. So at least our old courthouse would like to be open to the public on those days anyway.
Yep. Now they do run different systems for cooling and heating. Is that correct? Is Tony in there? That's the same system. So yeah, you'd still be heating and cooling.
But we have
Thermostat here to
thermostats
control
on the
that.
side
Yes,
and-
yes, you
yeah.
could back them off during
and
that
we'll
time
start to
frame.
Know that.
Yep. And then roll out. So again, if we go forward with this, we talked about doing it a month in notice. That way we could get it out. I spoke with several of the electeds on that. If we felt that was adequate time, they believed it is adequate time. I as well believe it's adequate time. Again, if we get these steps going on the next step side, the advertising, getting the signage up, getting that communicated where people are aware of it. So. Any questions on that? I should have had a question slide at the end.
For your Friday, are you going to, for your people that are on call for like roads and such like that, that'll extend into Friday?
Yeah, and so with some of these, really the intent with this is to say, how do we do the 4-day week? Roads is going to stay on their same schedule. So Roads already works the 410s, and they do an alternating. So they have a crew that works Monday through Thursday, and they have a crew that works Tuesday through Friday.
You'll have that covered.
So that we'll still have coverage on Friday, and that was, David's recommendation. That way, if we do have some kind of storm event or something like that, we have people here to clean it up. The on-call will remain the same for them. This is really going to impact the office hours as far as serving the public. Any other questions?
Public Works has figured out everything with Tony and stuff and what they'll do.
Yep. So Tony's been working on that. And some of these, like I said, with the courts, I talked to them about what their needs are. So there'll be somebody that'll be on call if we have a plug toilet or something on a Friday, if they need some support. I did speak with Judge Ford about, when they have a jury trial, we may step up what that support looks like on that day if it rolls into a Friday.
Just a comment.
Go
I
ahead,
just think I think it's a very small, but a great benefit for the employees or for our Greenlee family. And if they feel that their department wants to take advantage of that, for their employees, I think that's great. I don't want to stand in the way of making the employees, a little more happy. So I'm all right with that.
It could also assist with retention of employees.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. I think it will help tremendously.
I have one last comment.
Yes.
The 22% not in favor of,
Mm-hmm.
is there gonna be any talk in regards to how if they stay on the 5-day schedule?
So yeah, so with this,
Department by department
yeah, so with
discretion?
this is just operating hours when the doors are open.
Okay.
The schedules behind the scenes are going to be determined by each department.
Okay.
All I asked, and if you guys saw the policy on that, is that they run them by HR to make sure we're in good standing with FSLA. Other than that, it's really up to their groups to work the schedules that work for their employees.
Cause I see that there's some folks that might not be in favor of it, but then there's nothing that can be done once we go into this schedule. So
Yeah.
I'm just,
And so this is operation hours, not schedules. So that's kind of that separation. So there is opportunity for those schedules to be altered underneath this umbrella, right? These are just when the doors are open.
okay.
Pretty much every
There-
department has some work that can be done when the public isn't necessary. I
Yeah.
think of, for example,
That's
assessment
my
stuff.
point.
There's some work that could be done that isn't interactive with the public. And that may take place on a Friday.
Okay.
I have a strong suspicion I will be here on a lot of Fridays because that's a good day to get things done. But that will be left up to each department head and elected to run that within their own. Like I say, some departments have already moved that direction. And so this will be our outward facing hours. How that's managed within is we simply ask that they coordinate with HR so that we don't run into federal labor standards problems inadvertently. But I think in terms of what our open hours to the public are and where most employees will work, it'll be this 410 schedule.
All right. Well.
With that, I move that we approve of the proposed 10-hour a day, 4-day week work schedule as presented.
I second that move.
Motion has been made in second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, so ordered. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Austin.
Thank you.
We'll move into our next item of business. Bianca Castaneda, clerk of the board, discussion and action, review and adoption of the tentative board of supervisors meeting dates for 2025. Bianca, the floor is yours.
We put together the 2025 tentative meeting dates for our policy, which is meeting dates on the first and third Tuesday of every month, the start time at 8 a.m. We do have some meetings that were scheduled either Wednesday or Monday, and that those meetings were due to either conflicts with either a holiday or a possible election this year. But for the most part, majority of those are on the first and third Tuesday, again, with the start time of 8. We do understand that Supervisor Warren would possibly, want to consider some of those time changes, so we can go ahead and, or you all can go ahead and discuss that, and I'll make the changes, if any.
From the constituents that I've been visiting with, there's been a concern about when we have discussions that are high vision, that we perhaps look at a later time in the afternoon to have the meetings rather than the morning. So I'd like to keep that option open, have that on the record, that if we do have to change these meetings at times, such as one that we may have with the fairground, that we be flexible, be able to change those meetings, have those announced within the meeting's time, so that those people that would like to be here can be here for discussions.
And I would, Ron, I would agree with that. I think we have been flexible in the past, especially during budget sessions, when we're going into work sessions, but we know we're gonna go very late, it's easier to do towards the end of the day, so we just keep moving, so. No, I think with the opportunities come up where there should be more, constituent involvement in our discussions, that we kind of make that, when it works for them best. But I do agree that keeping the consistent meeting at 8 AM, I think that works well. One question that I had on that March 4th meeting, I see that there's listed there, it's not on the calendar because we'll be at NACO on the 4th. Were we gonna look at moving that date?
We will.
Okay.
We didn't have a proposal date till after this discussion, but we will certainly propose an alternate date for the March 4th meeting.
Okay.
And by way of background and history and law, the board can set a meeting anytime it wishes. The law requires there be 24 hours public notice. We put that up on our website. We post it in our boxes in locations around the county. Both the board members and the public have to have that notice. We have certainly moved meetings, both physically. You may recall at one point, we actually held a meeting down at the show barn at the fairgrounds. Because the second matter was the show barn at the fairgrounds. And so the board can move meetings within the county, both physically, and you can also move meetings to accommodate different things. We will try to recognize when there's going to be an item of particular interest and suggest perhaps a time that would work for those who wish to do it. Our experience has been over the years that for the regular run of the mill, making sure the bills are paid and those kind of things, afternoon meetings or evening meetings have been less well attended than morning meetings. But there are certainly topics that come up that would suggest a change of time or change of location. Those are within the board's purview to set. By putting up the tentative dates, we notify the public that on most occasions, this is when we plan to move. Almost every year, something comes up, we move a March 4th meeting, or we adapt to a budget adoption schedule or an election that's going on that year. And that will likely happen this time as well. But our for the past many years, our set time is Tuesdays at 8, 1st and 3rd. But we do have the flexibility to move as the board directs.
Sounds good.
Okay,
I believe we you recall, did we adopt this at the last meeting? You could move to confirm the adoption of the tentative meeting dates if you wish.
All right, well, so moved.
I second that.
motion has been made a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. So ordered. Thank you, Bianca. Okay, we'll move into our next item of business. There appear County Administrator discussion and possible action, review jail costs and incarceration services. Where's yours, Derek?
Now let's see if I can get it to come up here. Slideshow from the beginning. All right. Wanted to talk a little bit, if you catch the lights, Austin, a little bit to review and give some background and history of why we're looking at jail costs and some of the analysis that we've already done, and then suggest to the board some other areas where we want to look to get a fuller picture of how we provide incarceration services. So, by way of very brief background, our criminal justice system, as one of its components, both rehabilitative and punitive, is that we put people in jail, we incarcerate them. We'll talk about trends in that area, but that's one component. And for local incarceration, the traditional way of providing that service is through a local county jail. Our current jail is about 46 years old. I believe it was dedicated in 78. It was built to the standards of the time. Nearly 50 years ago. I will tell you that modern incarceration philosophies and design is much different than it was a half a century ago. It cost us at the time, I believe, about $2 million to build. Boy, wouldn't we love to go back to those days. My best ballpark at this point right now is probably 10 times that amount. Like I say, we can accommodate about 40 inmates. There was a time when we housed inmates from Graham County, their female population. They double bunked a lot of the rooms and we ended up, I think we had 42 was the maximum we've done. Some of those double bunks have been disassembled. They could arguably be re-put together, but that's about our capacity. We have seldom used our full capacity. And that's actually kind of a good thing because you need to be able to separate inmates based on classification, gender, whatever. But we've seldom run at that full peak. Like I say, the one time I can remember in my nearly 30 years with the county is when we were housing some female inmates from Graham County temporarily. But most of the time we're not there. The jail is designed so that it anticipates a larger male population than female population. Over time, that's pretty accurate. There may be any given day where we have as many or more females than males, but most of the time it's more males than females. One of the things that's lacking is that there's been a strong turn. In fact, there's even funding at the state for some counties to institute rehabilitation services, reentry programs. How do we get job skills? How do we facilitate, for example, family visitation so that families can be reunited once incarceration is over? Our current jail doesn't really accommodate for that. The jail staff has done a good job of making that work as best they can, but it was not designed for that. It's also difficult to maintain separate spaces for different inmate populations. So if you have somebody who's accused of murder, you don't necessarily want them in jail for somebody or next door to somebody who committed a DUI, a misdemeanor offense. Our jail can do some of that if our population is low enough, and we've been able to manage that. If the population rises, that becomes more difficult, particularly if you need more and more separation between different segmented groups. Our jail costs for maintenance are rising. We've had some of that by simply an aging building with aging, electronic locks and those kind of things. But we've also had, for example, we needed to modify a cell a few years ago for suicide prevention. That was an extremely expensive endeavor. Change out the toilets and the light fixtures and all those areas in a cell where someone could harm themselves. In our current situation, this is a result of the pandemic, but it's becoming more and more common everywhere. And that is that most visitation is done with audio-visual link, a video link, if you will. There's a service that the jail contracts with, provides, so that most visitation is done by that. It's like a FaceTime sort of a thing, or a personal Zoom call. That is true in Graham County. That is true in many counties, if not most counties now, as opposed to the physical visitation that used to be the norm. I think it's about 2 years ago, and I think Tyler's here, he can probably confirm that. It was about 3 years ago, we moved our population for a few weeks over to Graham County. Oh, there you go. How time flies. But we had a period of time towards the end of the calendar year. There needed to be some leave taken. We didn't have the extra personnel, and we also had some major maintenance issues. So we temporarily moved our population over to Graham County. Like I said, as I referenced before, there was a period of time when we took the majority of Graham County's female population. Those kinds of things happen. There are also sometimes just trade-offs. We have had over the years inmates who needed particular, for example, mental health services. And so those inmates were located in Maricopa County. I believe 1 year ago was in Pinal County temporarily. And like most county offices, there are times that counties simply trade. But when there's been wholesale population moves, it has been done from time to time. The way I've put together the analysis is essentially on a focus on our daily cost per inmate, or our daily cost divided by our inmate population. It's essentially our annual budget divided by 365, divided by the number of inmates for any particular day. So we may have 6 on one day and 20 on the next day. And so our cost per inmate will fluctuate based on inmate capacity. The higher number of inmates we have at the jail, the lower cost per inmate per day it goes. Our input for this is 3 areas. We budget a substantial amount in the sheriff's office budget for jail services. That detention staff, detention leadership, there's some costs, detention supplies and so forth. But we also draw costs from our public works department, maintenance of the jail, changing out fixtures, whatever the case may be. And we also have a substantial commitment of funds from our health department. We have a nurse who part of their assignment is to check on inmates, make sure medications are there and are distributed. We also occasionally have inmates who have major medical episodes that need to go to the emergency room or the hospital. So we budget in our health department budget for inmate medical to cover those types of expenses. We've been tracking daily inmate population since March of 22. So we've got almost 3 years of data on that. And we've been able to see some trends. Some of those were affected by events at the moment, but more importantly, we're seeing some trends that I think will play out over the years. We track both actual as well as budgeted costs, but the analysis that I've done is based on budgeted costs. And the reason for that is that in county budgeting, one, we do it once a year as opposed to updating it quarterly by law. The other is that once funds are committed to a budget function, then absent specific action of the board with justification, we can't just move those budget funds around and so forth. So if we commit $2.2 million to our jail during the budget season, that's committed. We were able to take a few years ago towards the very end, I think we did it in June, and we moved some excess vacancy savings out of the sheriff's office budget towards sheriff's office pensions to help pay down our pension and the liability. But the analysis is based primarily on budgeted funds. You'll also see some actual or realized funds in the analysis. This is going to be hard to read, particularly for those online. You'll see that my conversion turned $0 into SO. I don't know why. This is more to give you an idea of the types of costs that go into running a jail. This is out of the sheriff's office budget. You'll see there's a commander and the leadership. There's detention officers. There's also control room operators. We have the EREs, employee-related benefits. And then we have the supplies that go along with running a jail, from office supplies to detention supplies and so forth. As we move into the other 2 budgets, we've got, like I say, custodial supplies. We put some money into maintaining the grounds. And that's a very wide category. It could change, year to year, month to month. We have the availability. You'll see that in the last couple of years, for example, we've had to repair air conditioning units. And when those hit, they're not cheap. And so we budget for that. Many years we don't use it, but a lot of years we have. And as the jail gets older, we're finding we're having to use these funds more and more. In the health department, we've got a director of nursing. You'll see that we've got a community health nurse and a public health nurse. That's a budgeting glitch where we budget for one, but have been charging the other. On the net, we're where it's not a concern, but nevertheless, these are the types of expenses we're looking at when it comes to maintaining health services in our jail. This is the first page of analysis. In the red, you'll see there, this is essentially an annualized average of inmates per day. So in 2023, we had an average of 5.5 inmates in the jail every day. Some days there were 13 or 14, 15. Some days there were 0. But on the average, that was not quite 5.5. In 24, it rose to almost 8 per day. And then so far in the first 6 months of fiscal year 25, we're at not quite 10 inmates per day on average. That number has dropped again in December. In September, October, we had some higher counts, but we're back down to the 6, 8, 9 range a lot of the days recently. That second line is what, and you'll see the vertical areas here. This is, of course, actual spent. This is what we actually have spent in that year or through the current year. And this is the budgeted expense. So as we come down to this figure here, the $1,000 in fiscal year 2023, our budgeted expense was essentially $1,000 per inmate per day. That's how much it was costing us in terms of budgeted dollars to have inmates in. You'll see that as we move across to the actual expenses, 944, we didn't spend all that we budgeted. But because of our budgeting that we're required to do by law, we've got to set apart that amount, regardless of how many people are in the jail. Frankly, our folks show up whether there's nobody in jail or whether there's 15 people in jail. You'll see that that figure has gone down as our population has gone up, as we track across this line to the 778, 680, 645, and 621 on actual expenses. This third line here is the actual daily cost to keep the jail open. This is not divided by population. This is how much it costs us, budget or actual money, simply to have the jail open. So it's $5,500 in 23, and it's risen to $6,200, almost $6,300 a day in 25, and that's 365 days a year.
And that's based on the fiscal year 2025 budgeted total expense of almost $2.3 million.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. And that's those three, budgeted areas we just talked about. The next chart below that is sort of a reverse analysis. So as I visit with Graham County, they have outstanding contracts with U.S. Marshal's Office. I believe the San Carlos Tribe. They may have a couple of others. They built a new state-of-the-art jail within the last 10 years, I believe. They built, like many small counties, they overbuilt. At the time they built, same with Navajo and Apache and some others, there was a huge federal population. So the philosophical thinking was, we'll overbuild, fill it with federal prisoners, and they will essentially pay for our jail. Almost immediately after that jail was built, the federal dollars dried up. And so they have a small population, but nothing like they had planned on. So they have overcapacity. And what we've seen is just about every small county that's built a jail has built overcapacity with that same philosophy in mind. The trouble is the federal placement of prisoners has been very hit and miss. And so they've got overcapacity. They're currently contracting where they can, I believe at $75 a day. That's the last figure I've had. It may go up. It may have already gone up. And so this next section, the blue lines, are a way to sort of reverse engineer, if you will, and say, well, in order to get down to $75 a day, how many inmates would we need to have at our current budgeted or actual cost? And you'll see that it's in fiscal year 23, it was about 75 inmates a day. In fiscal year 25, in order to get our budgeted per inmate cost, we'd have to have nearly 85 inmates in the jail per day. Our capacity is about 40. So we'd need to more than double our capacity. We know that the cost to house in another facility is not the only cost involved. For example, major medical is likely going to still be ours. If we have somebody in another facility who has to be flown out because of a heart attack or something, that's still going to likely come back to us. Likewise, there's transportation costs, and there's some other costs that we maybe have not considered. That's a part of the analysis where we need more input. But even if you were to go to that bottom line and assume that our daily cost, the fee to another county plus our cost were to rise to $200 a day, we would still need to have about 30 people in jail every day to bring our cost in line with other facilities. This is essentially where I keep the data. We're up to over 1,000 lines of data now. I want to give you a sample of what I track here. Every day I get a report from the jail of how many people are there and if there's been any arrests overnight. So we can keep track of that. We simply list the month, go down 1 through 30 or 1 through 31, 1 through 28. And we list in each of those days, how many inmates were in that particular day. And like I say, this goes from March 1st of 22 through today. The third column there, the number of arrests, I began tracking that and went back and backfilled. And the data that I get from jail is very clear. They have the new inmate line items highlighted so that the courts know, hey, there's somebody in jail that needs to be seen. So we know that's a new entry into the jail. Why is that important? Because as we begin to talk about transportation costs, are we getting somebody in the jail every day, twice a day, 3 times a day, once a week? That helps us better look at and understand our transportation needs if they were to go to a different facility. This part of the data needs to be caught up. I'm a few months behind, but up through through when I had this current, it was about 3 arrests, a little over 3 arrests a week. Rarely, although it happens, you'll see somebody arrested in the morning and somebody else that afternoon or evening. But most of the time we're seeing a single arrest. It may involve 2 or 3 people, a fight or something like that, but it's usually when there's arrest, there's 1 a day. That's too simplistic for effective analysis, but at least it's a starting point to let us know what our transportation needs would be. Our courts have automated quite a bit, and that may suggest additional automation, but a lot of hearings now are not held physically in here or in the Superior Court. Many of them are held over audio-visual communication. There are some hearings that you cannot do that for. A sentencing has to be held in person. A trial has to be held in person. And so, but those are some jumping off points for further analysis. This is a bit of a repackaging of the information I've already shared with you. Over the past almost 3 years, our average inmate population has been 7.3. That's starting when we began track in March of 22 through December 31st of last year. I will say that most of the time that I was a county attorney, we averaged about 20 inmates, but there have been some significant changes in jail populations and the reasons for that, which we'll cover a little bit here. But like I say, over the last 3 years, roughly, we've been between 7 and 8. We've had days where we've had 15, 18 people. We've had days where we've had 0 people of our own. Now, during that period of 0, I believe we had an inmate from a neighboring county that was here, but our own regular population, we've not had any. For great long periods of time, most of our population was there on probation revocation. So they've already been through the system, and then they've been accused of violating their probation. They will be there usually till the end of their probation revocation proceeding, or maybe given a term of jail as part of their consequences. You'll see the cost, like I say, as we've increased population, our daily cost has gone down. This tracks our daily count in graphic form over the last roughly 3 years. You're going to see an exact inverse relationship with this chart, which is our cost. So when our population is the lowest, our cost is the highest on an inmate per day basis. It is leveled out somewhere in the $500 to $700 per day range with our current population as it's been going.
Per inmate.
Per inmate per day, yes. So, like I say, we've talked about the discussion with Graham County, and this is not in any way to suggest that we have some agreement with Graham County. This is simply to say, this is, when I visit with my counterpart, this is what they are charging others, and that's what I've last talked to him about. We've talked about some of the other costs. I think there may be some other costs that we've not yet identified. And so identifying all additional costs and giving it a good analysis, I think, is necessary to making informed decisions. And then obviously, can we strike a mutually beneficial long-term agreement with somebody that is stable, both for us and for them? And there's some components in there that I think that could work. But that's a discussion that we've not really started yet. Because this would be a paradigm shift, not a temporary shift. There's some things that have changed. So I talked about a regular population of 20 to 25. One of the biggest things that has changed is that a large percent of our cases, when I was prosecuting, and I'm now nearly 10 years out of it, is that marijuana was a big factor. Not just arrest for marijuana, which was a felony at the time, but also that an officer would walk up to the car and you can smell marijuana like that. That would lead to further investigations, which often turned up further crimes, either more drugs or all kinds of different things. And it was a effective on-ramp to finding other crime. So not only would the person then be in jail for the felony marijuana possession, but also for any other crimes that were found. As with the legalization of marijuana, that doesn't happen anymore. There are some small carve-outs where marijuana possession may not be legal, but smelling marijuana by itself, by law, by the courts, is no longer probable cause to search a car. And so that's had an impact. There are other crimes that used to require incarceration, driving unsuspended, that don't necessarily require that anymore. There's also been some changes in philosophy. For example, there's been a movement for at least 10 years, probably further than that, that incarceration does not rehabilitate like we once thought it did. So the idea was, if you put somebody in jail, they'll quit doing whatever it is they're doing. For many, that's true. For some, that's not true. And so, like I say, a shift towards programming, rehabilitation services, maybe counseling, things that help people actually live better in society rather than simply locking them up for a time. That has had an impact on incarceration rates. How ready a case is. So a case may occur, and for a variety of reasons, it may not be ready to prosecute for weeks or even months. Take, for example, a DUI where blood is taken. It may take a couple of months for that blood result to get back. As a result, that person who might have been arrested on the spot with a breath test may not be arrested at all under the current situation. And then, like I say, there's a lot of moving parts that are moving away from incarceration. So I think that the 20 to 25 that was common when I was prosecuting is probably not likely to be the new norm. Where that new norm settles out, we don't know yet. But at least that's some of the trends we're seeing. Like I say, there's a new administration. Will the trends continue as they were? We don't know yet. Obviously, we're 7 days into a new term of office. If the decision was to take our current facility, which the shell is fairly sound, it's the inner workings of the shell that would need work. One, redesigning space within to make that more efficient, perhaps reducing the inmate maximum population in order to make space for other things. But if we need to do that, we would obviously want to get at first an initial estimation of what a rehabilitation cost might be. And then if that was the direction the board wants to go, we need a full-blown, we'd have to figure out what that's going to cost. Is it 6 million, 10 million, 20 million? We don't know. There are firms that specialize in this kind of work. There's one architect firm in particular that we've consulted in the past. They show up at all of the national county conferences. They're there every time because they design jails. That's what they do. And so being able to get a cost per foot, in short, you say, we need a facility that will house 25 inmates under current modern standards. And they can give us a ballpark of what that may cost on a per square foot basis. Same with rehabilitation. It may be a little less exact, but the same idea. We should look. One thing I think is important to note, we'll talk about this a little bit more, is that we run a very lean operation as it is. So it's unlikely that we will reduce a lot of our fixed cost with either a rehabilitative facility or a new facility. You got to have so many people there. You can't, for example, have a single detention officer by themselves in the facility and that's all that's there. You've got to have layers of people and backups. So if with a rehabilitative facility or a new one, we're going to have to decide what fixed costs might be lowered. If it's renovated, obviously for a period of time during the renovation, which I would imagine would be months to a year or more, we would need to house our population somewhere else. If we were constructing a new facility, obviously we want to get, again, a starting point of what current costs are. Inflation, as we know, for the last 5 years has been extraordinary. Construction inflation may have been even worse than the regular economy. Obviously, as we develop, we would need an exact cost that we could go to, and I'll explain this in a second, but we need to know exactly what we're going to cost and what a jail would cost. That's involving architects, engineers to design the facility, not only with the physical space, but also electronics that may be necessary for audiovisual monitoring, remote door, action and so forth. If we built it on the current footprint where we currently have utilities, again, we may be relocating temporarily. If we built it on the same campus, but not on the same footprint, then we probably would need to relocate prisoners. There's been suggestions in the past that the entire jail be relocated to another area. One suggestion was the 3-way. If we do that, then we don't have an interruption of inmate services during the construction. There'll be other things to consider there, primarily water. Water seems to be the first thing we ask anymore on anywhere in the county. And so those would be things that would need to be developed if new construction were considered. It is highly unlikely that either renovation or new construction can be done with annual current budget capacity. In other words, we're gonna have to bond. We're gonna have to go borrow money in the market to do this. Rates right now are in the 5%. Who knows whether there'll be, there's a lot of speculation about tariffs and whether it'll be good for the economy, bad for the economy, whether inflation goes up or down. Right now, I can tell you that most highly rated government issued bonds are yielding 4 to 5%. Simply because we're not risky. However, a bond float of say $20 million in the bond market is considered very, very, very small. That tends to push rates up a little bit because you're looking at a small volume return. But there are many partners out there who are absolutely willing to work with counties during the pay down of the public safety retirement system. Most counties, we did not, but most counties bonded for that. And so they're paying that debt off over 20 years. This was at the low part of interest rates, and there were counties that got 1% and 2% interest rates. There are companies willing to work with counties to do that because we're considered safe bonding. Bonding does, however, require voter approval to take on that much debt. There's some small debt, like when we finance a road grader or something like that, that we can approve without voter approval, but a rate that essentially exceeds our annual budget requires voter approval. So if we came with a good idea and say we want to build a new jail and the voters say we're not lending you the money, then because those bonds are paid back with tax funds. And of course, like I say, we don't know whether or not a new or rehabilitated facility lowers fixed costs or not. My inclination say it wouldn't lower it very much. So here's some direction we would like from the board if you would like us to continue to go forward. Now, I will tell you that we've known that our aging jail has been a problem for many, many years, and we've kicked the can down the road. I would imagine if I talked to Tony on the wrong day when the pipes busted or something, he would say we're way overdue. Our jail commander certainly can give us insight on the challenges of an older jail. We can't put it off forever, obviously. So the questions I would like direction from the board on that we can come back with additional information analysis is, do you want us to explore an estimated cost of new construction? And I think what we would do is probably limit that to same campus, different footprint. So that way we're not looking at buying new land, extending utilities. We're looking at just the cost of the facility itself. When we do that, there are things that many modern jails have, for example, co-locating your justice court, which is your first interaction with most inmates. We could build space for that. But if you want us to look at that, we can certainly try and get some estimates. We've got some, I believe, somewhat dusty on the shelf plans that we could dust up and get an idea. Second, do you want to look at renovation costs? like I say, I believe our shell, the actual bricks stacked on one another, the block is in fairly decent shape. There's a lot of stuff inside that could be redone, redesigned and redone. Do you want us to do additional analysis on transportation costs, identifying other potential costs that perhaps we haven't thought of yet, as well as medical analysis? We can do that. And then we can give some thought to, it'll be somewhat speculative, but we can give some thought to, and this would be primarily staffing levels. New jails are designed in such a way that inmate movement is minimized. So you don't need as many people in a typical facility to move people around the facility or get to the room where the video link to the court is, that kind of stuff. Our jail was not designed with that in mind. And so we can estimate some of that, but if you'd like to do that, we'd be glad to. Likewise, if there are any other questions you'd like us to consider, we'd be glad to start working on that analysis. If we do any of this analysis, we expect to have it be detailed enough that the board can make an informed decision about what may be the best direction going forward. We intend to work hand in glove with Sheriff Ellison and his staff so that we understand these costs or estimated costs extremely well. I don't want to come in here and say, yeah, we're about 50-50, flip a coin, you decide, we'll go with it. We don't want to be surprised. We want to do our sweating up front so that when a final decision is made, we feel comfortable we've looked at all angles of this. So with that, I'll take direction from the board and follow whatever direction you'd like us to go down.
Go ahead, Lester.
No, just, from my vantage point, we haven't kicked the can down the road, but I think that's more to gather this information that we're trying to gather, because it's at the end of the day, it's all about how much taxpayer dollars, Greeley County taxpayer dollars are going towards incarceration. Right now, I mean, we have to decide, do we stay with, a little over $6,000 a day, to operate that jail facility? Do we rehab it for 5, 6, 10 million? I don't know what that number is. Or do we build another, build a new jail at $20 million and go to bond and all that? So, I mean, those are all of it is a large impact to Greeley County residents. And so, when we talked about the possibility of outsourcing to Graham County, obviously, for the taxpayers, that's a benefit, but obviously there are other issues, the transportation costs, the cost of people wanting to visit those inmates, having to drive all the way to Graham and things. And so those are things we have to put into our decision factor. So personally, I would like to know the other costs, transportation, medical, etc., all those other costs, and have those included in the daily, per inmate cost. But then, yeah, I think we need to get some, and we've already had sticker shock on building a new jail. We know what that is. And with all of the different stipulations and all the changes that have happened since 1978 to now, there are many rules in place that increase those costs, for that facility. But if we're able to look at the other costs of, remotely looking at some inmates in some or all in Graham County, and or rehabilitating our current facility, I think that those would be my first steps. I think the building a brand new jail is last resort for me.
Can I speak?
Go ahead.
I echo Ron's thoughts. I'd like to see the further additional costs for transportation, medical, etc. I'd also like to look and investigate a little bit into perhaps a renovation. But as you brought up, I'd like you to work very closely with our current sheriff's group, with the professionals there. They would have the knowledge of what would work and what wouldn't work. Perhaps they could give you more insight too into that transportation and medical model, and traveling and such like that. So I agree with Ron. I think there needs to be some more investigation. My opinion is that a new facility is probably not going to work for the costs, the amount of the new one. So I would like to look more into renovation and the further additional costs for transporting them over to Safford is an option. I think we also need to look at Safford and maybe, I don't know if you gave us, if you did, I didn't. I don't remember it, but the last time you have visited with Safford, what those current costs are. So that could help you with your extrapolation of what that further cost analysis would be. Those costs may be up to 150 a day. I don't know.
I know the last discussion I had was within the last quarter, but I've made it clear to my counterpart in Graham County, we're not talking serious, we're just flirting. And so.
And from my experience also, I like, while these studies are being done, make sure that this is going to be something that's going to be lasting. We don't want to have it to be a drop in the bucket. It's going to last 3 to 5 years, and then our costs balloon and triple and quadruple. So perhaps have a 5, 10, 15-year type horizon to look at, so that we can have sure numbers to present to our constituents rather than having a balloon cost at the end.
In that regard, one of the things I meant to address and forgot, I apologize, is that there's been some suggestions that perhaps this facility be converted into a juvenile facility. Right now, Graham and Greeley are both as most rural counties are transporting detained juveniles to Pinal County. There's a reason for that, and that is the cost of both physical design and detention staff training is through the roof, and your liability is astronomical. So one of the more common high liability experiences in jail facilities is a suicide. If you have a child who commits suicide, your costs can go as much as 10 times as high. There's just tremendous cost to the point where, as I visit with our insurance folks who work in that space, they said the only way that would work is if the state of Arizona agreed to take custody, physical ownership of your jail, and then have the state convert it as a satellite juvenile detention center run by the state. They're just, if it's 20 million to build a jail, it might be 30 or 40 million to build a juvenile detention. So while there's a great appeal to having our juveniles here, and we're still working on those solutions, that's not a viable path forward financially or from an insurance liability point of view. But I will certainly develop those costs. I'll continue. As I visit with my counterpart, we are both looking for stability. In other words, it doesn't help them for us to go in for 3 years and then pull the rug out from under them, nor does it help for them to pull the rug out from under us. So absolutely, any arrangement for outsourcing would need to have a very, very long horizon with the ability to renew. So
Plus, it may provide the economies of scale for both groups.
indeed, it would
be beneficial to both. And I'd like to see perhaps in that study also probably a maximum renegotiation cost at the end of the 15 to 20 years. You know, so at least we have something to go by too after that, so we can be prepared for the future.
Okay. Any other direction the board would like to give staff?
No, I tend to agree with these gentlemen here on the issues that were brought up. I think the only thing that might not have been mentioned is, we have the sound walls and the block walls that are in that facility right now, but the roof on that, can you chime in, Tony, on that roof? Does it need a lot of work? Because I know there's leakage here and there, and well, those gentlemen probably know more.
Yeah, we've done a silicone roof on it about 10, 12 years ago. And we still had leaks on it every year, so it really needs to be redone.
Okay.
What was the cost 10, 12 years ago? Do you have any clue?
No,
Okay.
no idea.
It's probably doubled since then.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
Or more.
but tripled, yeah. Okay.
All right,
We
I
will-
think,
we'll work on
yeah,
that.
okay. All right. With no further discussion, we will. Okay, where are we?
At number 9.
All right, we'll move into our next item of business. Item number 9, Derek Repair, County Administrator, and Bianca Castaneda, Clerk of the Board, County and State Budget and Legislative Issues, Mid-Year Expense Analysis. Derek, that's yours.
I'm gonna start on the budget side of this. Every month I give you an update on where we're at, where we stand with revenues. I had hoped to get those numbers in. They usually arrive between the 10th and the 12th of the month following the revenue distribution. So rather than combine these, we'll cover expenses this time and talk about revenues again next month. As you'll recall, we were running about $400,000 projected revenues over budgeted. So we were slightly above or slightly ahead of our budgeted projections on revenue. We'll see in December whether that trend holds. This is a little bit different analysis. I wanted to go through and so this $20 million is what we budgeted for our total general fund budget in the current fiscal year. Our expenses are running at about 34%. Now, because of the way we budget in county, we budget once a year. We have to build in quite a bit of flexibility. So for example, we have a substantial amount set aside for indigent defense. Most of the time, we don't spend anywhere close to what we have budgeted, but we have it there in case, for example, a substantial murder case comes up that may take 2 defense attorneys and several experts. We've got that capacity. We have a contingency budget that we almost never touch. But if something unexpected does come up, we budget it. We budget, for example, for unexpected or unrealized at this point grants. So we may receive a grant. We receive one, for example, from United Way to be used towards the fairgrounds project. We knew we had applied, but at the time we budgeted, we didn't know whether we would get it or not. And so we build capacity into our budget that we know in some cases we're not going to use. We also get vacancy savings. This particular budget, the total budget, also includes just shy of $3 million of federally sourced money that has been set aside for capital projects. The fairgrounds being the current most high profile one, but it's not the only one. We've been doing work out at Loma Linda Park. They just finished the pavilion, the replacement pavilion over the picnic tables. Looks great. The field has been leveled, water drainage has been addressed. And so we have other capital projects going on, but we've set aside nearly $3 million for that. That's temporary money. As we've talked so many times, it's one-time money for one-time projects. So our general fund budget is a little bit ballooned. If we were to, let's see if I can get to show up here. If I take that 3 million out, our budget looks a little bit differently. We've spent about 40% through the in first 2 quarters or the half of the fiscal year at roughly 40%. If you take those federally sourced one-time dollars out of the budget. I've done something somewhat unique, and that is that we've taken expenses, essentially divided the budget in half. So if we had $20 million for the whole year, that's roughly $10.5 million for half a year. And so we can see as we go out here that there is how much of that budget on the half year are we spending at. You're going to see as we go through, these are not every general fund budget. There are a bunch of smaller ones. These are our major impact ones. Our elected officials, for example, the assessor, right about where they should be. Our assessor, recorder, our treasurer, our school superintendent, you'll see year in, year out, they budget very exactly and spend right close to it. As we plan. So there's 96% utilization, Board of Supervisors, 92% utilization. The attorney, once again, we've got some vacancy savings there that was being utilized for a third attorney to address certain issues. We just recently struck up a contract with a nonprofit to manage some of that, but we have some vacancy savings here. Voter registration, we planned more money than we thought we would need because our experience 4 years ago was we needed to be prepared for all kinds of voter registration challenges, legal challenges, whatever the case may be. You'll see that also in the elections budget that we planned ahead in case things went wrong. And I say wrong simply that there would be post-election challenges that the county gets roped into. But you'll see most of these expenses are going along pretty much as tracked. The treasurer is slightly ahead, but there are also things that take place cyclically in each office. So for example, the assessor has certain things that she needs to get done by certain times of the year, which may require more emphasis at one part of the year than another. Same with each office. There are tasks that need to be done that don't fall equally throughout the year, but we have to budget equally throughout the year. Administratively, you'll see that we haven't spent nearly as much. I need to check some of those. The large portion of the administrative budget is salaries, and it looks as though some of that may not have posted yet. So that figure may not be accurate. General services is where we have a lot of different funds that are contingency-based funds. We have, I think, $750,000 or $500,000 in contingency. We have a building in capital outlay. So for example, a couple of years ago, we had the water cooler tower had to be replaced. That's where we go to get that if it's an unexpected building or capital expense. So that general services budget always tends to spend at a less, slower clip, but that's because that's where we build in a lot of our additional capacity. IT, we're running about where we expect to. Elections, like I say, we planned. We were prepared in case litigation did ensue after either the primary or the general election. It did not, thank goodness. But the other half is that in our off election years, which splits a fiscal year, is when we replace voting equipment, when we do those kinds of things. And we will probably be coming to you to replace our main tabulation machine. It's old. I don't believe the company services it directly anymore. So we'll be looking at that. We do not want to get in a situation like one of our sister counties where they're flying in a machine from Omaha to do their tabulation. Like I say, with these other ones, the road budget, I've got double asterisks. We kicked in 700,000 towards our road budget. Most counties do this strictly out of HERF funds and other source dollars. We've always kept some general fund into it. It's allowed us to have some stability. I have an asterisk because there's some changes going on right now that are concerning. We have for at least 15 years received a portion of what they call the Secure Rural Schools Act. That was a replacement dollars for what used to be known as the National Forest Service fees. That was designed to be a temporary 3 or 4 years, and we're going on 15 years. What I've heard most recently is Congress is not likely to redo that. That's a big chunk for us. And so that will also have a domino effect on our payment in lieu of taxes or our PILT funds. So I've been in discussions with CSA on how that would work out. We intend to talk to our congressional delegation about that as well. But that could affect our road budget, which is why I've got it in here, even though it's not a primarily general fund funded area. With that, like I say, we're running about where we should be on our budget. So our revenues are slightly ahead. Our expenses on the whole are slightly below our projected budgeted spend rate. That leaves us in a good position. We don't have lots and lots of margin, but we're in the black as opposed to in the red. So that I wanted to share that with you at our half-year mark. Any questions on that?
Is this information shared with the department heads and elected?
They have access, everyone has access to their own budgets, their own spend rates. I know Renee and I were talking yesterday, they'll often check with Renee, but every one of the department heads and elected officials can go in at any time and find out what expenses have been posted to their particular budgets.
Didn't get that percentage or whatever, just to that.
They're
running
Can't remember, there's a percentage column at the end.
Along with
Yeah.
the final totals.
I just think it's handy for.
It is handy.
to
And like I say,
know where
they
you're
each
at.
know their budgets better than we do. So like I say, if there's something cyclical happening in the assessor's office, she's gonna look at that and say, yeah, okay, we're ahead of spend, but the second half of the year, we're gonna be slower spend,
Yeah, right.
whatever the case may be. And she would know that much better than I would know that cycle. We know our cycles, they will know theirs. But yes, it's available to every department head or elected official.
Good info. Thank you.
With that, let me shift briefly. The legislature begins next Monday. I believe Supervisor Warren will attend the State of the State and the opening ceremonies at the legislature. There's a lot of speculation about how this is going to go. Here we are, just finished an election, and already the next election, 2026, is going to cast a very long shadow on this legislative session because Governor Hobbs is perceived to be very vulnerable. There have been talk about challenges from within her own party as well as a Republican matchup. Right now, it appears 2 years out that a woman named Karen Taylor Robeson, KTR, as she's now referred to, has got the nod from President Trump. And there are some who think that that will clear the Republican field. There's some other Republicans out there who aren't so sure. But nevertheless, I think with both House and Senate controlled by the Republicans, and with slightly greater margins than last time, there will be many attempts to put legislation in front of Governor Hobbs that exposes her vulnerabilities, knowing that she may veto them, but trying to put her on record, if you will. So what we may see is less principled governance and more political governance. We've seen that the last 2 years. I expect that to continue. That's not to say that substantial things won't get done. There will be, but there'll have to be broad agreement. Again, some of the themes we look to be looking for are water. I think that's not going to be something that's going to change. Our current drought this rain season isn't helping. So water will be a persistent theme. Elections is going to be a theme. There are a lot of election related bills that have already been pre-filed to try and change how the main focus is going to be how do we count at the last. The main proposal that's gaining momentum right now is a proposal to model or mimic what Florida does, and that is shut off early ballots the Friday before the election so that those late earlies can be counted. And election results can be much more substantial on election night. But I think we're going to see some movement in elections. Every year, something pops up that people didn't anticipate. And we don't know what that is. It usually starts to raise its head in the March area. Every year, people speculate that this year we'll get out early. I'm not holding my breath. I would not be the least bit surprised if we're not May, June, before this legislature sine dies. For us, that creates a challenge because usually one of the last things they do is the budget, and we don't know the budget impacts from the state on our county budget until they're done. They are starting budget work earlier this year. And just like last year, they may adopt a budget mid-session. That forever has been the last thing the legislature did. Once they got a budget, they all went home. That was not the case last year. And I think it may not be the case this year. They may adopt a budget mid-session and still do other bills going forward. We shall see. Our biggest concern is what they do from a budget perspective. They may pass laws that affect us otherwise, and we'll be keeping an eye out for those. But our biggest concern is if they cost shift down to us or impose new programs without funding. And that's where our primary focus will be. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
No questions yet for me.
No questions here.
Hey. And that's all I have for that agenda item. You can catch your lights again.
What was yours, Bianca?
Next Monday, the 13th, legislative session, opening day. The 15th, CSA, they all have their new supervisor orientation. That's the 15th and the 16th. Small counties, equal and WIFA is on the 15th, and then CSA is on the 16th. January 20th is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Our offices are closed. We will have our board meeting on Wednesday, the 22nd. LPC meetings start on the 24th, Friday. And then the following Friday, the 31st, there'll be another LPC meeting. And that's all I have for January. February 4th, our first board meeting is that Tuesday, the 4th, LPC on Friday, the 7th. February 14th, county managers and LPC. The 17th, President's Day, our offices are closed. So our second board meeting we have scheduled for the 19th. Small counties, equal and WIFA, that same day, the 19th, CSA on the 20th. LPC on the 21st, and SEGO on the 21st also. The following week, the 28th, Friday, LPC meeting. And that's all I have for February. If I need to add anything else.
Well, would I assume the March meeting
Go.
would be moved to the 11th? because we'll be in DC on the 4th.
Oh, yeah, so the month of March, we did have them scheduled for the 4th and the 18th. But because, NACO conference starts on the 1st through the 4th.
Can we move that to the 11th and 25th?
Yeah.
Still getting the 11th, right?
That's just a suggestion, but
If that works for the board, we would probably have a meeting typically scheduled on April 1st, but we can look at those and come back with suggested dates as well.
I don't know if we want to do it on April Fool's Day.
That may be
A lot
wise
of
anyway.
jokes, I don't.
But we can.
So you'll look at that? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
and we will come back to you with a revised revised calendar for those dates.
Okay.
March 14th, county managers, and then on the 19th, the small counties, ECO and WIPA on the 19th, and then the 20th is CSA. And then the 25th, we'll have our second board meeting. And I'll make those changes. And that's all I have, unless the board has anything else to add.
On the February, Bianca. NACO starting on the 28th. To the 29th. Right?
NACO
third.
starts March 1st.
Oh, that's why we're flying.
Oh,
out.
that's,
Yeah.
oh, that's why
Yeah.
you're
So
not
right.
including that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So travel day will be on the 28th.
See that, I can see the Saturday.
Was there something different or?
No, I'm just making a note, since Mr. Lunt is still on the WIPA board, but he's not on our board anymore, we don't need to plan for those meetings. He would have meetings that coincide with some of the stuff the board was doing, so we kept that on the calendar.
And just an FYI, on February 4th, I'll have to probably call into that. I'll have to call into that. I'll be here.
Okay. For the board's information, there's our annual health trust meeting that is scheduled from the 19th through the 21st. We believe that'll begin in the evening on the 19th. That's where we set policy, look at proposed health insurance rates, look at our benefit structure and so forth. That'll be involving myself and Mr. Adams and probably Phil Yanez as well. Like I said, that's our annual policy setting.
That's February.
February
Okay.
19th through the 21st.
That it, Bianca?
That's it. That's what I did.
Thank you. Okay, our next item of business, consent agenda.
I believe there's a request to speak.
Oh,
On
number
item
9,
10.
is that number 9?
Go 10D. Should be this one. Send it just.
Oh, 10D.
Yeah.
10D. Danielle Rodriguez.
Good morning. I'm Danielle Rodriguez, employee since May of 2002. I'm here to address my request to keep 2.5% of my pay per personnel policy 114 pay plan section H. February 2017, I received an 80-cent increase for taking the sergeant's position. Austin Adams, HR, proposed a 12% pay cut for me. While under the policy, it states someone who is demoted for disciplinary issues shall result in a lower pay of at least 2.5%. I am demoting voluntarily for personal health reasons. In deliberation on 12/6, Austin Adams had proposed $26.13 but then reverted back as reprisal due to the former Sheriff Tim Sumner strongly disagreeing with him based on this policy. Austin advised that he felt that I should not be paid the same for less responsibilities, but Tim advised him that the policy already addressed this issue. This policy is not new. It's been in effect since 1991. I believe I am being targeted due to my questioning and fighting for my pay. I am being subjected to the political animosity between Tim Sumner and the boards, maybe who I supported as well. Per policy, it states that department head approves, if the department head approves, and Tim did, yet the board still felt that they needed to review the policy and that they needed to hear what the incoming sheriff had to say. But I asked why when Tim had already approved it. In 2017, a sergeant demoted under then Sheriff Tim Sumner and the chief deputy at the time, Eric Ellison, and he kept 2.4% of a loss of only 59 cents. The board approved this with this ETF without incident or big discussion. On 1/3, new Sheriff Eric Ellison advised that I would be losing 5% of my pay because he did not agree with this policy and that he did not believe in letting an employee keep the same pay after demotion, that he did not want to set precedents, but this issue has already been addressed. He stated it would be up to the board, yet Austin Adams stated that the board would do whatever Eric Ellison suggested. I feel even more retaliated against after Austin Adams and Eric Ellison's conversation with me. We had a meeting. They stated that they would be taking a full 12%, not the normal 5%, and that I would be, if I demote, I would be placed on probation. When in the time that I have been here, Amy Miller and Daniel Medina both demoted from sergeant, and they were not placed on probation. So I ask, why me? Why now? Why am I being punished for choosing my mental health over the job? Being on probation makes it easier for Eric to lay me off per policy, correct? I find it disheartening that the county, along with the newly elected sheriff, can pick and choose when they follow the policy. Now using this policy as a weapon against an employee, placing us on probation as a form of punishment. I have seen new incoming employees make almost as much as the old employees who have been here a long time, right? I've seen people in your office get significant pay raises. So I ask, what about your employees who have been working with the county for lower wages for years? You're taking 12% of my pay, and I don't believe that's right. Where's the consistency? Thank you. Oh, and I also ask if you can send me the final outcome on that to my email, and I'll send my Gmail account to Austin. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
We want Austin to explain anything on that item D.
That is certainly the board's discretion.
I gotta appreciate that.
Yeah.
This is Austin Adams, HR Director. So giving a little explanation on this particular one. What we did with the salary on this, those folks who decided to demote or were looking at the option to demoting, we went back to their previous wage when they were in the demoted to position. In this case, it's dispatch. And we went through and started at that dispatch wage and then gave every raise that they have gotten since to the point they are now. So we pretty much cut out whenever they took the sergeant's bump, right? And some of this factor, she's talking 12%, is because it's compounded every year, right? If you get more here, it's going to get higher as it goes. So we went back and we put them as if she never left dispatch. So the wage that's on the ETF is if she stayed a dispatcher and just maintained through. That's the same thing we've done with the others as well. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's how we came up with her salary. If I used the scale, it came off a little bit lower than that. So we went with what it would be if she was remain a dispatcher that entire time and get all of the raises, all of the increases that the board has done since her time being dispatch.
Go ahead.
And just for policy sake, right, the 114 pay plan, item H under demotion. It says an employee who is voluntarily demoted or involuntarily demoted for non-disciplinary reasons may be retained at the same salary rate held prior to the demotion, subject to the approval of the department head. So you've had meetings with the current department head right? Because, you know.
Yes, sir.
The reason that we didn't decide this, because the new department head was coming in, right? And I didn't think that that was fair to. Anyway, but, so you've already discussed this with that department head, and that's the direction of the department head.
Yes, this has been discussed with Sheriff Ellison, and that is also the direction from him.
Individuals, correct?
For all three individuals, this is not just her.
Just clarification, as you said, your amount you came up to was you went back to, had she never been promoted to the supervisor, moved up year to year.
It gave her all the increases she received. So she got all the same increases just based on her starting pay as a dispatcher instead of a sergeant.
And it brought her to the amount that she's
The-
declining.
The 2507 that's on the ETF, yes.
Just for my own edification, just so, Sheriff Ellison, you concur.
Yes, I concur. He did exactly as I asked him to. I asked him to go from the base salary of what she made, and give her a fair bump all the way up, so there would be no discrepancy. And so he did exactly what I asked him. So the numbers are true. There's no miscommunication in it, and they're accurate. So that's what I feel is fair. I just don't feel that paying somebody to do a job that they're not currently doing, getting that paid for it. I don't see any business that does that, and I don't agree with it.
I just want to make sure we're fair, consistent, transparent, and if we fit those, then I'm good.
And I have a comment in regards to the probation side of it, where she stated that there's other employees back in the past that were not put on probation when they demoted and everything. Is there, what's the fact there?
So the policy reads that the department head can elect to put them back on probation. And so we've had discussion, me and Eric discusses, and it was his decision, but I wholeheartedly supported it as a good idea to, when you have demotions, to have a probation period again. So it is a 6-month probation, just like the standard probation period. There's a little different caveats on it in policy, but it is up to the department head to make that decision.
Okay. Well, with that said, if no one has any more questions or concerns, I entertain for motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as listed.
I second that motion.
Motion has been made and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, so ordered. Okay, well,
Thank you.
thank you, Austin. We'll move to our next item of business, supervisor reports. Supervisor Campbell,
I don't have any at this time.
and I'm sure you don't have it. But if you have, you have the right to say anything you want today.
I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for all my constituents. Thank you to all the county employees. I feel very privileged to be here to serve in the public. I'm looking forward to being down the opening on Monday, 13th. Looking forward to getting to know people and to getting to work. Also going to be starting my training on the 15th and 16th of next week. So my goal is Ron and David's goal is also, if I'm speaking out of turn, please let me know.
No.
Is transparency and fairness is going to be my theme while here in this seat. To be transparent and fair to all those. I know that we are not always going to be not always going to be able to make everyone happy all the time, but I want to be most fair and as possible to all of the constituents in our county, because this is a great place to live. We have a wonderful thing going, and I want to make sure that we continue to do that while being fiscally responsible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome on board. Okay, so I have nothing to report either, so we'll move into our next item of business. Work session. You want to take a 10-minute break or for the work session?
That'd be helpful, yes.
Okay. All right, we're gonna take a 10-minute break.
Sure, Austin back in here.
All right, we're on item number 12, work session, review state land acquisition. I believe that's efforts and issues relating to acquisition decisions. We have 5 items on here, and we're gonna start off with the
Reed, do you have the
one. Which one did you tell me?
for why and other places?
Other, Austin does it.
Oh, he does? Okay. All right. So to introduce this topic and why we want to do this in a work session fashion is at the chairman's request, and it was on our agenda to begin review as well. Some of this for Supervisor Warren's benefit to give some background, and some of it is because we will need some direction going forward. And I've listed sort of a catch-all in case we forgot something, or more importantly, if there's something else the board would like us to explore or to talk around. State land is held in trust by the state of Arizona for the purposes of public education. Most state land is leased for either grazing, or in some cases, there's solar farms on state land. There's other leases and so forth. The land can be sold under very specific processes at auction, and the proceeds go into that fund to support education. You will see for example, there was I think it was a 30-40 acre parcel in the upper northeast corridor of Scottsdale that bordered Scottsdale. Went up for sale a couple of years ago. I think it realized something like $100 million, something like that. Obviously, that's prime real estate. It's a little less prime out here, more of a top sirloin. But nevertheless, the state land office, particularly under Commissioner Said, has been extremely open to working with their office for us to acquire some land for county purposes. And so we're going to talk about these somewhat in order. Hopefully Austin will be able to bring those up for us so you can visually see what we're talking about. I'm going to introduce the topic, but I'm going to probably turn parts of this discussion over to Reed and to David as we talk about different. You got one on closer to the airport for materials pit, or maybe it's on the same map. We just need to scroll to it. Okay, that blue square right there. The first thing we wanted to talk about is we currently gain a lot of our materials for our various road projects, repairs, whatever we do. At a location that is on BLM land called Nigro Canyon. It's west of Highway 78, about halfway between Freeway and Clifton. And that's where we pull material out for a variety of different things. There are some limitations on why that's probably not a good viable option going forward in the long term. And then this area that's been outlined in blue has been used by other contractors. It provides a variety of different materials and the ability to develop different materials, but it is on state land. And so with that, Reed, I'm gonna have you kind of flesh that out and why we're pursuing this particular area.
Yeah, just to elaborate a little bit on what Derek said, we just renewed our permit at Negro Canyon for another 10 years with the BLM, and the people at BLM were really helpful, but their process is arduous, and they actually had us revise our permit application so that when it went through their review process, it would make it through. And they're just really strict about what we can and can't do there in that pit. So in talking with Mr. Manus, if we were to acquire this from state land, the difference is that BLM leased the pit. Here we would acquire the property, and that's an arduous process as well, but it's a one-time thing where we go do that paying of the acquisition from state land, and then it's ours, and then we do what we want. And it's in my opinion, it's a better material source. It's a bigger material source. And it's going to provide, and it's in a little better location too. Mr. Manus's crews, they make some creative movements, traffic speaking, to get to the Negro Canyon pit, and they cross
Median.
southbound 191, where GPS officer might furrow his brow at him. Anyway, trying to say that delicately, so David doesn't kick me. But that's the backstory there. If you remember way back, when Tri-County used to be more sand and gravel, Jack Gilbert bought it, changed it to Tri-County. He has leased that pit on a temporary basis from state land over the years and mined material out of it. He didn't do that consistently enough to make it worth.
This same one right here, Reed?
Yes. Wow. And there's supposedly a well somewhere on that parcel that we would explore and perhaps put into.
Is there any NEPA requirements or anything on that? I mean, when we get that state land lease, I mean, as far as, you know, endangered species and all that good kind of stuff?
In terms of acquiring the land,
Yeah,
there's
with
not
mine.
a National Environmental Policy Act requirement. It's simply changing ownership.
Right.
It is possible because one of the advantages for materials is that drainage. It
Yeah.
keeps bringing new material out of the mountains, right? But that drainage eventually ends up in the river. So is it possible that some operations could have a NEPA effect? It's possible. We would obviously, I mean, we have the same concerns on our current location. It's also in a drainage. But those, you know, those are concerns that we would work with over time. Being as further removed from the river itself probably mitigates that somewhat. But we've not specifically explored that in terms of acquisition. It's not an issue.
Okay, good.
It might have been mentioned, but what's the acreage on that?
That what you're seeing there is 40 acres.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
We're swinging for the fences and
Cool.
Well,
we have.
not much else is gonna happen with that property.
No.
Especially not being right there in a drainage
Right.
bed. Yeah.
And you're saying it's already developed then, right? It's already been utilized by Tri-County Materials in the past?
It has, the last time they used it was enough. There's been enough time go by and enough storm events between then and now that when you drive around on there, you don't see a whole lot of evidence that they were there. But yeah,
But you're not gonna have to pioneer any roads going in there?
no, his crews will more than likely improve the roads, but not any.
So you won't run into vegetation removal or anything like that, so that,
Very new.
that'd be good.
There's a road, you see the road there
Yeah.
that comes and it goes all the way, it pops out over at Loma Linda.
And sort of to place you, if you've been on your way up to Mule Creek, there's that S curve that, you know, just after our airport facility, and that comes off you can see it right there. Where it comes off that S curve. And that's already a decent road.
Some we can, our Negro Canyon pit, it's kind of a 4-step process to make our AB in there. Our 3/4 rock, our 6-inch, 4-inch minus, all of it is a 4 process. It takes a while, you know, it's a big process. As me and Reed walk this here, I think we can cut that in half. Another thing too is it's in between the Clifton district and the Duncan district. So that's gonna help us for short hauling. The other thing is our trucks get beat up on that road. It's a good, mile and a half in there to that pit.
The
And
current
it's in a
pit,
wash.
the current pit.
Yes, sir. So it's gonna help us be cost efficient in the long run. So just a few things, you know, that I wanted to add to it.
Have we made application with state land yet for this? We would certainly like to move forward that unless the board would, you know, tell us not to.
Go with it.
Oh, go for it.
Let's go.
Our next one is the landfill expansion, and this is one that Mr. Gomez and Mr. Campbell are well aware of. We've been doing this for quite some time. But essentially, we're looking at the long-term, and I'm gonna leave Reed because he knows the history better than I do, but we're looking at long-term ability to continue to have landfill operations for decades into the future. And Reed, if you get a little bit of background on those colored spaces there and what we're looking to acquire and why.
So I think the red one, that was the original acquisition, that's 40 acres. And then several years later, the county acquired another 60 acres to bring the total to 100. And that's that blue flag shaped parcel. And you can see that we've been very, very active in that area. That has our current C&D cell and also our municipal cell. And so the proposed acquisition is below that, the purplish color. And you can see it juts out to the west further than the parcels above it. And the reason for that is there's a dirt tank or a stock tank there. And that collects the stormwater from the bulk of the existing landfill. So that's important to us for SWEP reasons. And we wanted to own that and be able to control it when we bought this additional land. So we've been working on this for about 2 years, and our project manager from the state land department tells us that it's going into a committee for a first review. And then it'll go into the committee and that will vote on it. And it needs to go to auction. And when it goes to auction, they advertise it for about 10 weeks. So he says realistically, we're looking at about the middle of the year. And that just extrapolating that gives you an idea. If you're not pushing the state land department, which we have not done on this one, we'll be into this time-wise 2.5 years from start to finish.
Some of the things we've encountered on this is one of the processes that it takes to acquire state land is a archaeological survey. And they did find, as we've talked before, you two are aware, Mr. Warren, you're not, they found a line of rocks that, or maybe more than one line of rocks. It was put there by the CCC Corps close to 100 years ago. And because it was put there so long, that now becomes artifact that at least needs to be cataloged, if not preserved per se. And we've worked through that process. We're at the back end of that, are we not? So it's been surveyed, it's been documented, and
so they submitted a historic properties treatment plan, HPTP, and that's been approved by state land department and by SHPO. We just need to implement it at some point before we mess with the rocks. And that could happen after we've acquired it.
Is that gonna keep us from operating in that area where those rocks are, or once they're cataloged, we can?
No, my recommendation to Derek is that we implement that plan right after we acquire the land. And they'll go out and study the rocks some more, take pictures of them, give them names, whatever, put it all in a big report, and then we can go out and blow them up.
Okay.
if it's any consolation to those of, and I'm sure Gail will know this, but these lines of rocks are all up and down the county here and there. There's just miles of them out on the Lazy Bee. There's different ones put up by, some were prisoners of war in World War II. Some were put up by the CCC camps. They're all over. This isn't like this is the only line of rocks that you'll find in Greenlee County. So
My father-in-law helped put that one in.
there you go.
So I want the rocks.
Maybe they'll give you naming rights. I don't know, for one of the rocks.
Give her a couple of days to pick up those rocks after we acquire it.
But nevertheless, those are the hurdles we've encountered. And like I say, we've not felt the need to press on this one because we currently have enough footprint to continue operations. C&D is our construction demolition cell. We've been doing study for a little over a year on the best way to move forward there. We've got recommendation of what we should do. But we can fit all of our current operations and at least short-term projected operations on the current footprint. So we don't anticipate moving into this new land, but we need it there because someday we will.
You need to define short-term, like 5 years.
David and Reed arm wrestle over how long our C&D cell will last.
So we keep the railroad ties out of it.
Yeah, that's true. That helps.
My house instead.
So we're probably anywhere from a year to 2 or 3 years, depending on how it works. I know we're on lifts above ground level at this point, so.
We're starting our 4th lift, and we still got another lift after this, and those lifts are going anywhere from 1.5 years, 2 years. So we're looking at 3 years out, 4 years out, somewhere there.
Reed would argue that.
Derek, clarify for them, that's just the CDD cell.
Yes,
The overall operation won't move south for, it could be a decade, literally about the
Yeah.
time that Mr. Minnis retires.
he can't go till he's 74.
How long have those existing cells been there? How long has the dump been open, I guess?
1960,
So it's been
I'd have to look.
It's been
50,
decades.
60 years.
Yes.
In the sixties.
And the current operations, like I say, we've improved what we do over and over, you know, and keep getting better. We're shortening the pulls, you know, from where we dump to where we move dirt, where we dig a cell. The C&D cell has been an issue. Part of that is simply it reflects the economic activity associated with the mine primarily. One of the problems we had is that when we opened up our new cell at a cost of about $350,000, the very first thing that went into it was a couple of thousand railroad ties. And it just ate up a chunk of that hole that we just put in. We knew there was another tie dump coming, and so we worked with the railroad and said, we're not accepting that. We can't afford to just bury ties. As a result, they are stockpiled in different places. People were allowed to come pick them up. Some of them were destroyed in the process of changing ties. But a lot of those were usable ties. And I know there's a stack out in the Sheldon area with the McBride family. There's other stockpile. But for us, for purpose of Greeley County, they're not in our C&D cell. But we're filling it up quicker than the previous hole was done. We anticipate proceeding on a new C&D cell. If not this calendar year, probably the next fiscal year to begin the planning process. You'll recall we got some additional revenues from a dirt removal project where a bunch of contaminated dirt was placed in our landfill. That revenue we'll use to primarily fund the C&D cell. So that's our landfill expansion.
And I just gotta say, if it comes down to an arm wrestling match between you two, I'm gonna pick David, and I apologize. In any of these things there. No, yeah.
Let's move now to the Ward Canyon realignment. This is one where this would intend to correct or address several issues on that road. Wouldn't it be nice if it was so smooth like they always show on TV?
Oh, that's tabletop.
To the right.
Talking about the bridge.
Want to go pilot it, Reed? Oh, there we go. Little red line right there. So there's a drainage in this area that is filled up with debris over time. It's an old drainage, a culvert system underneath our current road. And so this proposal was conceived, try and take that curve out of the road and to then be able to readdress our drainage. Right where that red line crosses the drainage there. Reed, if you could expand on this, why we're looking at this and what the proposal is and where we're at in the process.
So Ward Canyon Road's a major collector. And we're looking at projects up and down, we're making progress on Soapbox Canyon. We're having a kickoff meeting with the consultant that ADOT selected to design that one, so that's further north. But this is the Negro Canyon drainage. It's on our bridge inventory. This is the Loma Linda Wash drainage. This is not on our bridge inventory. In other words, it's not recognized by ADOT and FHWA as a bridge. But it's not in great shape. It's quite narrow. And so the goal here is to kill two birds with one stone, take that kink out of the road, and in so doing, build a new structure across the wash. We applied for CDS money for this project, and we didn't make it, but they encouraged you to reapply, and we will apply it again. But this would we'd get a jump start on that project by acquiring a 100-foot corridor from the state land department for that new.
We have to install a bridge on that new road. We'd have to install a bridge, it's not just culverts or. I mean, but
It could be a bridge or a box culvert.
okay,
It doesn't have to be a bridge.
Yeah.
Tradition.
right, that's what I was saying.
The intent is to leave that old one there and make it a path from vertically to Loma Linda to the park.
Great idea.
Where the kids can go and on their bikes and go across there and stuff from over there,
And that's the park on the right-hand side.
up there and top. That way to the right,
Okay, right there, right, yeah, okay.
sorry.
Where are we at in terms of the acquisition process? Have we,
We need to talk to Bruce, our new contact at State Land Department about this one, about all of them, honestly, and we're gonna do that sometime this month. But this one's in the initial stages, and State Land Department and Greeley County both. I'll do that between themselves, but we need to figure out what the right of way, whether we have an existing right of way.
we have mentioned this in a very preliminary fashion with a meeting we had, is it late November? With state land, the commissioner was on the call as well as the deputy commissioner. And they are very well aware of this area, partly because of our previous discussions about housing development. But they were open to the idea, but we recognize this is in its infant stage as far as concept development. We recognize there's an issue we need to do. By the way, the fact that we may or may not have right of way, that's not an uncommon occurrence, not only in Greeley County, but across the state. There are roads that exist that we don't have a birth certificate for, and we don't necessarily always know why or how they got there. But they're there. And like I say, every county in the state's got a handful to a basket full of them. So. Any further questions on this one?
No, just real quick, so what is our easement on that road? So this new piece would be outside of our current easement?
Yeah, it's either 66 feet or 100 feet.
Okay.
More than likely. Or right of way.
Sounds good. Are we gonna just list all these in priority when we meet with state lands? I mean,
We will,
have
but
them ranked? Yeah.
we don't, I mean, each project is its independent thing, so it's not like we want this, if we can't have that, we want this.
Alrighty.
So every one of these proposals stands on its own, and so we could rank our number one, and they say, for these reasons, you can't have it, or we're not gonna sell it. But we could start all of these simultaneously, they'll be in different stages, as we go through. But like I say, state land is evaluating these kinds of requests from local governments or from the private sector all of the time. Obviously, when the state land can realize millions of dollars of profit, they look at those harder and quicker. But they have been very accommodating on all of these discussions. I don't know that that's going to necessarily move them to go quicker per se. It's a slow process, and state lands for decades has a reputation of moving rather slow on everything. But I will say that the current commissioner has been very receptive. Her staff, is very receptive. It's still just trying to get a slow cog to move. It's just slow. Okay. But we have not prioritized them because we can go for 3 or 4 projects at once.
Great.
Any other questions on this one? All right, the last one is one where we need some direction, and we're gonna need all kinds of direction on this. So Reed and I go back and forth. He calls it the WYE. I call it the Y like a single letter. We could also call it the WHY. Why are we doing this? In a little bit of history, this discussion was born out of a discussion we called Tyler Farms. And in a very short nutshell, we looked at a farm that was retired. It was retired because of court orders regarding water. We had hoped that there was some way to work around that, but there is not. And so that project died, and we realized that if we go forward to try and stimulate housing, the first question we should ask is there water? can we get water? Is there both legal water as well as physical water present? So as we begin this discussion, the board approved and Reed contracted with a hydrologist to do a study. It's a paper study or a desktop study. We didn't drill wells, test wells. When we looked at it last time, we're about $100,000. And once the testing is done, you cap the well, you don't get to use it. It's very expensive. So we're trying to minimize our cost of exploration. We know that there are wells that feed the Loma Linda area. There are wells that feed the Verde Lee area. The same company now owns both of those two little tiny water companies. And so they have talked from time to time about blending the two systems. It would allow them to increase water quality for both systems. We believe, and I believe Supervisor Gomez knows as well as anybody, we believe there's at least one well, if not two, that are owned by these companies that are not online. So there may be some additional capacity. In addition to that, we've drilled our own well there at the ball field, which you can see at the upper right corner. It is a exempt well, so it's limited to 35 gallons a minute, but it produced 42 gallons a minute before we put a lower capacity well on it. And by law, we're limited to that capacity. How much water, where it's at, is a big question. And so Reed and I are trying to schedule a meeting with this fellow, the hydrologist, to help us understand what's the likelihood out there. Obviously, a paper top or desktop study, if you had unlimited dollars, would lead to a test well or two. We don't have unlimited dollars. And so we're going to make our best educated guess with the information we do have. The water company has also agreed that if there is a plan, so if you had a subdivision with, say, 100 homes, then they can do some studies to see if their current capacity can serve 50 or 100 or 200 or 300 homes, whatever it is. But they would need a more developed plan rather than just a concept. And so, because some of that will involve elevations, where you move the water to, where you pump it, so forth, so on. The area outlined, how many years ago was it, Supervisor Gomez, that pair started the land process? It was 10 years ago almost, wasn't it? 7, 8 years?
What's that, Derek?
There was a company, a pair of fellows land developer.
2017.
2017. Okay.
What were they
So
called?
7 years ago.
The two gentlemen, you mean the two gentlemen that
Yes.
that were going after that property? Well, I just know them by name. It's John Riggs and Kevin Ober.
They had explored this and actually had started the process. They had identified some property that now, 7, 8 years later, we're not sure why they identified the property they did. It was kind of to the north part, the top part of the green area. But as you'll see, most of that encapsulated square has a lot of flat ground on it. Some of it between the Y, and the Y is that intersection you see right there, but some of it on the, go to the bottom right quadrant, right there. That area leads up to the landfill on the south. The area to the left of the road, Skyline, there's a lot of flat area out there. There's some drainage, but by and large, it's quite flat. So there's a couple of questions. At a discussion we had with the State Land Department about a little over a year ago, they suggested there's some things the county could do if we wanted to do this for land. One is you could pre-zone the land. Even though it's state land, we don't own it. It could be pre-zoned, say residential 1 acre, whatever. The other is that if the county decided to pursue like this, you could break it up in parcels, say 40 acres at a time. And do you know the acreage of this, Reed? Roughly?
The area that's outlined here?
Yes.
It's massive. I know
Hundreds.
it's probably 160 acres.
Okay.
We're just painting with a very broad brush.
And this is more conceptual than anything else, but they did say that a purchase like this could be staged and so forth. So here's where we need the board to give us some direction, and you may or may not be prepared to give direction at this point. The state land acquisition process is you do an archaeological study, you do some surveys that are involved with it. So you define the property, make sure you're not disturbing an ancient village. But when you get to the point of an auction, anyone can bid. So the question becomes, if we get to the point of an auction, does the county buy the land? Ideally, if a developer came in and said, no, I would like to buy it. We bid $1, they bid $1.50, and they go build a bunch of houses and we're all happy. But the challenge is, what if the developer, any developer or no developer shows up and nobody says we're gonna bid? We need to know before we get very far into this process, does the county buy it? And if the county acquires it, there's a whole different set of considerations as to what development goes. There are counties that have gotten into building residential. Yuma County is probably the leading example in Arizona. Ana County in New Mexico has done some of that. But essentially, most of that has been done in low income housing, not low cost, not low entry, but low income. That's a very specific defined term. If the county was to acquire it, we can only dispose of property in certain ways. It also has to be by auction, whether that's auctioned by the lot or auctioned by the parcel. It also has to be go through so let's say we acquire all 160 acres, and we say we're going to find developers, and then we will sell it to the developer at the highest cost, say 40 acres at a time or 10 acres at a time. But one of the challenges counties have, and we've known this from the beginning, is we are neither quick nor are we able to move on a dime. In other words, we're not transparent. We are very transparent and very slow. That's by design. County government was not meant to be land developers, if you will, or in private business. There are some areas and there's some things we've explored that allow the county to work in this space, but we are probably not the best suited to get something jump started. It can be done. What would be difficult is we go through this entire acquisition process and we as a county have not yet decided whether we bid or whether we don't. The cost that would go into getting it to that point, if we pursue it, would be borne by the county. The archaeological surveys, the other surveys, we would bear that. Now, and Reed will correct me if I'm wrong, but if somebody eventually buys it, those expenses, and it's not us, those expenses are supposed to be paid back to us. But if we end up, let's say we take this all the way through and the board says, you know what, we're not in a position to take this risk, then we will have done that work. And then if auction shows up and nobody buys it, then it would start over again for somebody else. If we were to pursue this, I think that the best recommended way to go would be, as we are in the process, we also actively court and find developers who would say, we'll do it. Because ideally that's who would do it. Gary and I sat through last spring, I think it was, or over the summer, a seminar on changes in the law about what governments can do in public-private partnerships. It was very popular 10, 15 years ago, maybe even going back further than that. For example, for local governments to give tax breaks to people who develop a factory or a whatever. Those have been sharply curtailed by the courts. In other words, there was a development in Yuma County that got in trouble because essentially they gave a bunch of incentives to a developer, and what they got back in return was not very well defined. Their biggest definition was increased tax base, which is true. You build 200 homes, you're gonna have 200 people paying taxes that aren't now. But what the court said is it needs to be approximately a dollar for dollar. So if you give away $1 million over 10 years in property tax breaks, you ought to see $1 million of value back. So what developers do sometimes, they'll build parks or they've built schools as part of the development, so that there's an approximation of some kind saying that what the local government gave, they're getting in return. We would have to be creative on something like this. If, for example, we told a developer, you build 400 houses, we'll give you tax breaks for 10 years. To be honest, Greeley County's never done that. So there's a learning curve involved with that. But we would also need to be able to offset that by something coming back in return. Does that mean we shouldn't do it? No, it just, I want the board to be clear on some of the hurdles we will face as we go forward in this. And so one of the lessons we learned from Tyler Farms is make sure we got water. The other lesson is we need to know what our exit is before we go through the entrance. And so I would ask the board, as you think about this, we do need rooftops. There's no question. There are people who want to be here who can't find a place to live. We often quote the waitlisted FMI. It's unclear whether or not that's a true reflection of the market because FMI housing is so far below the market. But there's no question there's demand there. I think another point of interest, you look at the three-way, Apache Grove area. There's housing going up organically in that area. In fact, if you start down by the courthouse in Duncan and go north, there's probably 50 or 60 homes that have gone up the last 3 to 4 years between there and Verde Lee. But they're one off, two off here, there, and so forth. And it's kind of grown up organically as it goes. Whether there is a stable market for 100, 200, 300 home development in the area near Lowland and Verde Lee, I don't know. There was a housing study that was commissioned several years ago, it's about 5 years old now, that talked about the main thrust of it is the closer you get to Clifton Morenci, the higher the demand goes because you're close to work and your commute time goes down. The further you get away, still in county, utility and water issues are not as big a deal. So for example, there's a 28-acre parcel near the Church Jesus Christ in Duncan that is ready to develop. It's got utilities right to the property line. It would be very easy to develop. But every mile you get further away from Morenci, the demand goes down. And so that's sort of the balance. That's why Tyler Farms was so attractive, is it had a lot of the utility advantages and the location advantage. It just was legally locked up water. So this was a truly just a thumbnail sketch that Reed put together. How many lots was this, Reed?
Don't remember, Derek, I'm sorry.
I think it's in the neighborhood of 80-ish, maybe 100, somewhere in there. But that's just one idea of one potential idea there. We are starting the process. We've discussed this with state land more than once. They know that we're interested in this area. But again, we need to be thinking about our exit strategy before we ever start the entrance process. Because like I say, if we don't push state land, it's probably a 2 or 3 year process. If we push state land, it's probably a 15 to 18 month process at best. I know that another group in town is working on Modest Bluff, and they've got every wind at their back. They are sailing with everybody helping as quick as they can. And we're already, how many months? 8, 9 months into it? Give or take. Yeah. And so these aren't fast processes. So we can do some things. For example, we need to better understand the water study before we get too far into this. There are some things that we can do to inch this or push this along somewhere before we need to make any critical decisions. However, we do need to make sure that we don't show up on auction day and say, let's hold an emergency meeting and decide whether or not we're going to bid.
I got a couple of questions. I'm gonna spit them both out.
Yes.
So, all right, so my first question is, when we do go to, once we get to that point of auction, is there a fair market value requirement by the state that we would have to spend, right?
Mhm.
And then second part of that question is, what if we didn't go for the whole 160, right? If we didn't go for all of these sections and we limited our request to a smaller number, or right there at the Y, and maybe not include this one on the far right, that has a lot of it appears to be going down into a canyon or something, you know what I mean? So my question is, one, fair market value with the state. So we would have to know what our anticipated spend would need to be ahead of time. Rather, your example of, we bid $1, well, that's not gonna be the case, because that wouldn't be fair market value. But what would that number be? And also, do we limit the initial ask to see if we can, one, afford it, and two, get somebody else to do that? I think it would be more difficult for us to outlay all, the 160 acres, and then be stuck with some and trying to get a developer to develop some,
So let's tackle your first question first, and that is absolutely the state land. After you go through this entire process, will give an assessment, and they'll say the minimum value per acre is.
And they'll do that later, not upfront.
Not up front. So if we open up the application today, we would not know that's $1,000 an acre.
Right.
We have
They
some,
Go out and appraise it, survey it, whole 9 yards, yeah.
I mean, do we know what it would be?
well, we know what
Ish.
the minimum price is for the landfill, but you're literally buying property next to a landfill.
Right.
And that was how much? 900.
An acre.
If,
Acre.
I don't mean to speak out of turn, but the gentleman that were pursuing this initially, it came in at $1,600 an acre. And they never took it to auction. That's where they ended it.
I think, I think we could ballpark it at, say, $2,000 an acre or less. I mean, that was 7-8 years ago, so there may have been some inflation. One of the things that I've considered, I have not asked this, but if we pre-zone it for residential, does that cause the state to evaluate it higher?
Right.
Because it's not just general use. If you pre-zone it and say the neighboring rancher buys it, it's supposed to be used for housing. So would the state land look at that and say, this is pre-zoned housing, it's now 2,500 an acre, 3,000, I don't know. But
You would expect that to be the case.
you would.
Yeah.
You would. And in that regard, the closer we inch towards development, state land is not going to ignore that. And so, if, for example, we hypothetically drop 4 wells in there that collectively produce 10,000 gallons a minute, does that increase the price? Could be. We're not gonna be allowed to drill on state land without, some going forward. But the answer to the question is, we won't know exactly, but I think we have a ballparkish idea of what that might run. And I emphasize ballparkish, not first base, second base, ballpark. Yes, we can define anything from a strip of road to 40 acres to, I mean, where that, hypothetical subdivision is. Let's say that's 36 acres or 32.5 acres.
Yeah.
We can define, we get to say, we would like to purchase this and not that.
Right.
One of the things that I had not really recognized, I've been driving out there looking lately, but that area around the ballpark is flat there and
Both
there.
sides, both sides.
And those are, like I say, close to existing roads, close to existing utilities. So we might define, say, because that ballpark is roughly 10 acres, I think it is. The park,
Yes, it is exactly.
10 acres. So just eyeballing it, you've got maybe 10 acres to the northeast and 10 acres to the southwest. Maybe we define that. Maybe we take that little triangle where the cursor is now and we look at that area.
Mhm.
But the truth is, we could define what we want to ask for. And then if we say just that area that's currently outlined, that's where the archaeological surveys would be. That's where the other surveys, the Alta surveys would be. So yes, we can define it and we can ballpark what it might run. If at auction, if we have developers and we get 3 or 4 of those guys in there and they say, hey, that's 100 lots, I can make 10,000 apiece on those lots after I build homes. They may bid it up to 5,000 an acre. And that's great. State land wins. We're not in the housing business. And that's a win for everybody.
Yep.
We have talked, and I say we, I'm going to give credit to David and Akos. They have talked to a lot of developers. And the one that gave us probably our best insights, because it fell out of the Cottonwood area. And we were talking about trying to develop engineering studies. And he says, no, I've got people who do that. He says, what I want to know is essentially what's the demand? What's the income level of people who are likely to buy these homes? He says, if you tell me it's 75,000, I can build a home for a $75,000 annual income. If it's 250,000, I can build that home. But it was really more about demand of what the market is. And those are very difficult for us to measure. As a county, it's difficult for us to measure. There are folks out there, who have a better idea, but our partner, who is our single economic engine in the county, they're a private business, and so they don't produce, income, wages, information. That's not a criticism. I'm not trying to criticize at all, but it makes it hard for us to look into the crystal ball and divine what might be your average home buyer in this area. Is that a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom for us, family of 2 kids? Is that I mean, we've seen there's some homes in the Verde Lee area that are well north of $500,000. Is that our market? Probably not. But I'll tell you, I've been surprised at the size and quality of some of the homes that are on Fairway. Those are large, very nice homes. But a developer is going to probably want more information on who's going to buy them as much as, because this is flat area. If there's water, it's going to be relatively easy to develop relative to hillsides and so forth. The question is who's going to buy them?
Mhm.
That was a long answer to.
No, it's okay,
questions.
but that's good. So I mean,
Mr. Chairman, if I may
go ahead, Reed.
just emphasize something that Derek told you. I'm worried that there's people that are watching this meeting or will walk out of it and say, hey, the county's gonna go buy 160 acres. Absolutely not the case. As Derek said, unlike the other 4 areas that we looked at, consider that green square kind of an area of interest, not a proposed take from state land. I just wanted to.
And we're not proposing anything. We simply want, I know that Mr. Warren has not been a part of these discussions in the past, because we've been talking housing for a good solid 3 years. And how we stimulate it, how we facilitate it. There are a lot of things the county can do that are really in our wheelhouse that helps. So for example, let's say a private developer bought that outlined area. We can make improvements on Skyline to handle more traffic. We could pre-zone, we could, streamline a permitting process, which is already the easiest in the state as it is. So there's some things that the county can do to assist, but we're not building houses and we're not becoming the de facto developer. And like I said, these aren't questions that need to be decided today, but they are questions that need to be considered as you go forward. Because as we found out on Tyler Farms, we spent a considerable amount of staff time, and considerable is an understatement, on working that process, developing it, trying to see what could be done, what couldn't be done. And so even if we don't spend a dime, if you direct us to go forward, we will be spending some staff time to develop those ideas and bring as many answers back to you as we can. There are tools, for example, housing authorities that can be defined somewhat by the counties. We've never dipped our toe into that water. There are people who have, and they can help us. There are some counties that have done some very creative things in the public-private partnership space that we have not done. The one who's really cutting edge is Pinal County. They have the benefit of being right between Phoenix and Tucson, and it is the hot spot in the state right now for industrial as well as residential development. So they've been able to actually get a few things through the legislature that we would likely not be able to do, because they've been able to build it out in a way that is almost no risk. Different considerations, but I guess for me, if you'd like us to look at anything in particular, we're glad to do that. We'd like your definition on that. But we'd also like you to be thinking about what does that mean? How far do we go down this road before we're ready to commit one way or the other?
I think personal opinion is to identify those areas that make the most sense out of that 160, hopeful acres. But if it is, maybe it's just 40, maybe it's, 60 acres that makes sense, kind of where that plat is laid out, and then also surrounding around the park, trying to figure out what those are, and we, take that one bite at a time. We might be able to achieve that, then that might interest others to build it around that. But if we can, I think, focus on what makes the most sense for us.
I think in that regard, what we'll do is we'll break it down into smaller chunks that are easier to analyze and give you, if this option, here's things to consider, if this option, here's other things to consider, and so forth. Because you're right, there's like, for example, in the south east corner, there's a big drainage there. Yeah. May make for beautiful sites and house purchase, but may not make sense economically, who knows?
Yeah, and especially right now, right?
Correct, yeah, with interest rates what they are, and at least until we find out what the new administration's effect on the economy is, there's gonna be some question marks out there, correct? Mr. Warren, I know you're new to all of this. Certainly if you have questions or things you would like us to flesh out, we'd be happy to do so. This one, I think, the other two, we know exactly what we're trying to accomplish because they're a clear county directive that serves our county purposes. This one's a little more nebulous. And I think it's clear that more housing would be welcome. there is, just from my own discussions with people around the county, there's some pretty sharp opinions about whether or not counties should be involved in housing. I will tell you, there are counties in the states all across the country that do housing in a big way. And there are counties and states that would rather die on that hill than touch housing at all. That's a political, philosophical approach to the problem. I think there's no question there's demand for housing. How much, who bears the risk of that are the real substantial questions out there.
But I think we found that if we do nothing, nothing will happen. You know what I mean?
It's true.
That hasn't been developed. Reasons and if we don't do something to help to stimulate that growth, then nothing will happen.
I know from some discussions we've had, part of that is the risk analysis for the private sector. For example, I remember sitting in a meeting at the golf course when the housing study was put out, and there was a question asked: how soon will the mine go to robot, or automated trucks or remote controlled trucks? And it was, I mean, at that point, it hadn't been talked about. But these developers saying, well, if that's the case, does that mean there's now 300 less people to buy a house because they've all been replaced with robots? That's the kind of question the developers are asking in their mind. One school of thought is if the private sector does not see the risk benefit, should government step in? I don't know. But that's, like I say, you ask 100 people up and down the county, you may get 98 different answers. So we will look at that, and like I say, and we're certainly welcome all of you to visit with us individually, as a group, whatever you wish. But we'll look at some of these areas and maybe define them a little bit better. But this is the area known as the Y that we've been talking about for several months now. And I will defer to Chairman Gomez, because clearly he has been the driver on housing and has made a lot of the progress on a lot of these questions. So,
So we'll look into that further.
we will, if you want us to. What I'm hearing is a consensus that we should look into
Oh,
this,
yeah.
but in smaller chunks.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can do that. We'll also share with you what we learned from the water tabletop study.
Yeah.
Because if there's no water,
I've been curious about
Yeah.
that one. Yeah.
then we I think we go look for some other place, because water, what do they say? Whiskey's for drinking, water for fighting. That's us. So, okay. With that, I think that's the end of this work session. The next work session on the fairgrounds, I believe there's a request to speak. But then we'll gather on some maps here at the table and talk about where our discussions have been lately. I'll update you on the process. In terms of the process, generally, there hasn't been really much change to report out to people. But I wanted to bring you up together as a board up to speed where we're at, so that you're aware. And we will continue public outreach. We will continue to in fact, Mr. Werner and I will be visiting some folks this evening. And we'll continue to get that outreach.
Okay. All right, so we're out of our item number 12. Thank you for all the information up to this point. We'll move into item 13. Work session, fairgrounds, park project, and Gail. You wanted to speak on this. I just want to mention that you have 3 minutes to tell us what you want to tell us, but you can engage in our conversation, but it's not going to be in detail and everything, but maybe listening, you're going to get the scope of where we're at and what we've done and what we're planning to do. Okay? Is that good?
If you know me, I can do a lot in 3 minutes.
Well, the clock is just starting.
Yeah. No, I very briefly here. When we had our meeting before in Duncan, I had asked questions about the water. I've been doing a lot of research, and in June of last year, you had to haul water to the fairgrounds, okay, for regular use. That bill was $4,000 for 1 month. So if we have to buy water from Duncan, it's going to be extreme. So we need to keep our water usage down. So demand down. Okay. And the piping there, the existing piping that has arsenic in the piping, you cannot use that existing piping for drinking water, for human contact water. Used to be on the wiffle board, technical assistance, water and wastewater for EPA, okay? You can't run it backwards. If you run water in a direction, it gets a scale going that direction. You run it the other way, you have the CAP problem in Tucson of about 25 years ago. Where everything flaked off, went into everywhere, plugged up everything, and it strips out any arsenic from your old well there while it's doing that. So you've got contamination. So you're gonna have to address that problem. All new piping for anything that ever had arsenic in it. Okay. Yeah, so Duncan, my big problem is the water there. So the water park. And then you're gonna have to have someone daily do sampling at the water park. We don't have people who are there on a daily basis who do everything unless it would be like Lindsay or somebody like that. But they're gonna have to be able to sample that water better than the swimming pool does at the current point, okay? Because that water is contact with children. So you've got more problems there. So that was my big concern is the water usage, designing it for low water consumption. We are in a drought, and then making sure that what's there is not contaminated.
Thank you.
And we'll just participate in the rest of it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Want to gather around the table or what?
Yeah, let me again briefly,
I think Jim.
No, go ahead first.
let me, if I can find it real quick, remind myself of some notes. Briefly, by way of where we've gone, we've met with, on this project in particular, we've met with the community members, we've met with those who are in the rodeo world, including some who design rodeo arenas, as well as those who build them, those who use them a lot, use a lot of different rodeo arenas. We have visited with local users like our junior rodeo, team roping folks and like that. We have likewise talked about water issues. We know, for example, if we can't obtain enough water, some of our plans are not going to happen. If you don't have water, you can't water grass. We're working at developing our own water on site. We've got a fairly large footprint, a large campus, if you will, to look for water, and we've already identified some areas where we're going to give that a try. Water quality is always an issue. In one area it's arsenic, another area it may be overcalcification. And those will have to be addressed. One of the things we learned, as you recall, when we talked to Thatcher, was they were drawing water from a well that was very salty. So the more they watered the grass, the more brown and dead it looked. They've also kind of killed some, or not killed, but they got brown on all the trees next to the park where mist would drift. And so all of the leaves on that side of the tree were all brown. And it took them several months to figure that out. So we recognize the water quality. We've actually consulted with somebody about how you treat that, how you can economically treat that, how you store it in such a way that it has less evaporation concerns. So those are things that we are considering. And I appreciate Ms. Hackney's raised that because it's been on our radar from the get-go as well. We will be limited, as in every project in Greeley County, by water and what we can develop, what we can make quality. And we're looking at every option available to us. Like I say, at our public meeting, the mayor of Duncan pointed out that Duncan has enough water to sell us water. There may be a cost that's prohibitive on that. On the other hand, that our plan right now is to use city water on the splash pad because it does meet the standards for human interaction. If you're watering a field, the standards are a little bit different. Like I say, we've talked to a team roping promoter. We've talked to a team roping, or excuse me, a rodeo coach from a collegiate group over at Central Arizona College, and given us a lot of really good ideas. We've also sat down and looked at we've come back full circle, if you will, to the no option or no change option. Our current local team ropers like our arena, the college rodeo like the current arena. There's a lot to like about that. We have looked at Google Earth photos of probably 25 to 50 different arenas from Oklahoma to Canada to Wyoming. One thing is true, no two arenas are alike. And sometimes they're just bizarrely different. There's one up where they do the college rodeo finals. I believe it's in Wyoming, Cheyenne. It's this weird, crazy long thing. Many of them, not surprisingly, have horse racing tracks around them, or the remnants of a horse racing track around them where they used to do races. We've, like I say, we've gone on field trips to understand. We've asked Graham County and Thatcher, if you had to do this over again, what would you be thinking about? What would you do differently? Very insightful. For example, we learned some insights on pumps and which ones go out and why they go out and how you have to replace them. How can you design something that works for that better? I say we continue our outreach. The holiday season, we kind of stopped a lot of our progress. But what we wanted to talk to you about was one idea that Supervisor Warren brought up, and would be a somewhat change to our plan. With respect to the rodeo arena, we've kind of come full circle. What we're going to talk to you about today is kind of what serves our local users best. What have we gotten from our local users? We do not want to discourage team roping events or barrel racing events or pro rodeo or college rodeo. We want all of that to come. The more that thing is used, the better off we are. But who are we building it for has become a question. We've started saying, why are we building this park, fairgrounds park, ball fields, arena, everything? And so we've kind of shifted back that way. You'll see some of that reflected on this latest diagram. We have not made final decisions. We'll continue to get input. The challenge with this is, and we're finding this all over, if I ask one user group, they've got priority A, B, and C. If I ask a different group, it's C, D, and maybe A. And so whose priority list prevails is, in the end, the board's decision, because there are very disparate user groups. Those who play baseball as their primary thing, they may have a kid raising a lamb, but their primary thing is baseball. And the lamb raiser may have a kid in junior rodeo, but their primary thing is raising a lamb. As a result, you'll see their priorities reflect that. All of our designs have not encroached on the parking area for the junior livestock. And so we're kind of past that issue. But with that, let's gather around the table. I'll kind of lead you through, and let's have a robust discussion of what is important.
I think the important part is that we're trying to make it improved for all, and we will never make everybody happy, but hopefully we can make most happy.
Don't get in there, man.
Let me start with the biggest version. Now, this is the same map twice. In this case, the existing stuff has been faded, so it's easier to see the stuff. This shows kind of what's on the ground. One of the major things that has happened is most of this super has been removed. From about there over there's some rise. There's a section right in the middle, and that's because of electricity there. But this has been leveled out. This has been leveled out, and you can see easily now that this area and this area are almost exactly the same elevation. That provides several different things. It opens up this area, which we at this point perceive as sort of a staging area. This is where the horses would wait for their turn. The rodeo participants wait. This secondary arena, we've gone back to a much more simple design. It would be used for pole bending and perhaps barrel racing and those things. Lead line in the junior rodeo, where the parents or somebody leading their kid on a horse. It's more Spartan, much less developed than some of the other ideas we had. At our public meeting we held down in Duncan, we had proposed two arenas side by side. going roughly east to west. There were issues raised about, where the sun comes up, and does that affect the participants? Interesting, when I talked to the fellow at Central Arizona College, he also raised, if you run it north to south, it interferes with the, electronic timing devices. But that's that's an overcomable issue. Some places they just put somebody's ball cap on top of it and shades it from the sun and problem solved. Where we're at right now is we think the arena as it is a good facility. The people who are using it like it, that doesn't mean it can't be tweaked. And there's some tweaks we suggest. One of the surprising things we found is that the distance from the grandstand to the current bucking chutes is shorter than it used to be. Which we found a little bit surprising because visually it's kind of offset. One of the ideas we've talked about is to bring these chutes closer into the arena, build some additional staging pens back here. And then shift this back here. There needs to be some changes to this area to effectively handle stock. There's several ways to do it. One of the most sophisticated is this, they call an arrow design or an arrow feather design. And you have 8 or 10 or 12 chutes, you put a spear in each one of them, and they go in one at a time to the release chute. Kind of expensive, but those are out there. But a way to run the stock on the south end into the arena is helpful. We're talking about moving the roping chute slightly to the west. For team ropers, that helps because it tends to make the spear run predictably instead of just wherever it goes. That would also give us the opportunity to open up the eastern part of this side. Some of the advice we got from those who build and use a lot of arenas is that barrel racers, if they've got a big gate to run out of, those horses will run fast through the end. If there's a hard barrier, no matter what the rider's doing, that horse is going to start to pull up and run slower for fear they'll run into a fence. So if you shift this over and open up this other area where there's a large place for that horse to run, that tends to improve your times. We've talked about at one point extending the grandstands out. We've talked about additional seating here, eventually perhaps some covered seating, in some of the corner areas. The location of the secondary arena is that it gives, one of the areas you recall we talked about is trying to build sort of a natural separation between observers and participants. That's a liability issue. Right now, if you've ever been to a junior rodeo, you'll see along this track right here, it's very common, even though we've had to put up some barriers, horses are running through here, kids are running through here, little kids are running through here, and there's some, David Minister's grandkids are there, I'm not worried about them. They're running the horse. My grandkids are back there, I worry about them. So to the extent that you can build some natural separation, that's one of the things we're trying to design. So this, currently right now, if you go to a rodeo, you'll see that there will be 10 to 15 horses often standing right here by this entrance gate watching the rodeo. Some of our rodeo promoters have said that can be a problem. If you stage them back here and have rear entrances to your team roping or your breakaway roping, that cures the congestion in the arena. So this area would be sort of a staging area, if you will. The exact location we haven't nailed down. We want this big enough that if you needed to get a vehicle in here with a trailer or whatever, you could do so. But during events, this area would be for participants. This area would be for observers, spectators. We will also plan on putting a restroom back in this area. This secondary arena is not as visible you can see over there, but it's hard to see from the grandstand. The only way you really fully utilize the grandstand is to do the parallel arenas this way, and that creates an entirely different set of problems. So our community helped us point out every one map. What we did, we had 3 groups. We gave each maps like this. Every group turned them. So while you would maximize the spectator experience with side-by-side arenas, and we looked at several online, you would also create additional problems. This is probably our lowest cost option. It could allow for future development. But it would be suited to our current user group, which is our local green ropers, our local junior rodeo, our events that come to the fair and so forth. With that in mind, that's the arena side. It would free up all of this for parking. We've got some additional parking here. We talked about some VIP parking for people who spend lots of money every year at the livestock auction. That's all available in this area. We would not diminish our current parking, would actually add to it slightly.
I know that was an issue early on.
Correct.
Because of
Yeah.
the spectators, or not spectators, but people, showing their animals and stuff that it wasn't big enough to,
We just took away a bunch of parking, they would be
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah. So that's good, that's all.
Yeah. Open up my
Solves one problem for one group.
for one
Right.
Um. But nevertheless, like I say, balancing everybody's priorities. I doubt we're gonna strike the perfect chord, but we're trying. Let's shift over here to ball fields area.
Can I go back?
That's with the board's permission. Yes, go ahead.
You said the steers running down this way lined them out for the team moving. Okay.
From here.
Yeah, so they stay over this side. The reason the people are over there is to keep them to that side right now. So I have the same problem with the bucking shoes. It keeps them on that side and scares the heck out of them. Because they're bucking right down the fence line. And I've
This
been
way.
on a horse right down the fence line.
Yeah.
And that's scary, because they go into the fence a lot, especially the buckers. I prefer them to go straight across toward the audience or way over this way, but not so far that they're bucking down this way. But they all have a tendency to go right.
So that's,
Right in here, you mean?
Yeah, see, that's where the shoots are now, and
This is where they used to be.
yeah, they used to be in there,
yeah.
so they have to, they buck right down that fence. I put Dad. If it's team roping, he's down in those stands right there. If it's rough stock, I bring him up here, okay? Cause he cannot see it, so, but. I'm sitting down there with him and they're within 2 or 3 feet sometimes and even less of that fence. I've seen the guys knock their knees on the post of it.
So one of the areas, and I'm glad you raised that, because it's one of those things, like I say, 3 years ago, I didn't know there was such a thing as arena dirt. Else there is a bucking pattern.
Yeah.
But, we
Well,
actually.
typically walking pattern.
Yeah.
Because 90% of right handed.
Yeah.
We're turning that way. But, there's different philosophies on this. So for example, the visit with David, horse bucking horses, whether saddle or bareback, they will run to the other fence no matter where you go. And so I talked to the CAC rodeo coach and his dad, who was national qualifier, NFRF qualifier. He says those horses, if you put a fence out here, they may run into it. You put a fence right here, they'll run into it. They tend to run the fences. This bulls, not quite as much. They tend to stay close to the chutes. But it is a valid debate. And like I say, if you ask 100 people, you probably get 50-50, one say one, or 50 say the other.
If you don't mind, David.
Yes,
Because we moved them to over there.
And there's a
From
reason.
here.
Okay. A contractor on these bucking shoes here, you have a left-handed shoe and you have a right-handed shoe. Some horses come out of your right-handed chute better, some horses come out of your left-handed chute better. The ones that run to this corner here, they let them out of a right-handed chute. And they come down the center. Our biggest complaint from rodeo contestants and contractors on this setup here is the horse. If you look at them buck, they'll take 2-3 jumps out of the chute, straight out of the chute, and then they hit their buck. By then, they were already here, so when they get into this full buck, they were bouncing onto this wall right here. So the contractors and the users, everybody we talked to said, there's not enough room right here.
So we need to have a fighter.
And even the riders, all the riders that we talked to said, when you're headed towards that fence and that horse has his head between his legs. So they prefer this.
But that's what bothered me with it. I watched them hit it.
How long ago did you move that, David?
It's been over a year, right?
Yeah.
We've had 2 fairs there.
2 years. What are your thoughts, sir?
Month up, I would I would move these back. I would move this out. We've got a lot of space to come out here. Is there a way right anytime? And he's right. You get a little bit too short of cost there. But then you're the same way if you're worried about your space. Is this stuff, it's risky enough to the people and the animals. And anytime you get them tangled up anywhere near a fence, the possibility of something really wrong happening is exponentially higher. Just in my own thoughts, I would move this fence out here, give them more room, move their bucking chutes back over here. One of the reasons besides safety is that if we get to a point where we're trying to attract more people from out of the county to get involved in this, and especially your spectators. I mean, you've looked at a lot of places. I don't recall ever seeing a rodeo grounds where the rough stock shoots and the spectators were not right in a line.
Why not extend it this way if that serves the purpose,
Right.
extend it and leave them there, and if that way there's that much room there, so that you can have all this room here.
Sure, but you've got, what I would do is extend this and put it, I see what you're saying, you'd have more room. But your spectators are not gonna be sitting here looking down.
Oh, you want them to be facing.
They wanna be facing right straight after where things are happening, because you're not gonna, and they're the people, if you come down to it. The people that are gonna be in the stands and are coming to look and to pay to go into the fair, they're the people that are paying. Of course, your entries and stuff like that are also paying. But these are the people that are gonna make the money, I think, in the end, as far as supporting the whole thing.
How about moving it back this way? What's over here? What's proposed for over here?
There's no,
That's parking.
yeah, parking. Yeah, the only reason I wouldn't think of that is because I think most of this stuff here is fine. There's no sense in moving a lot of it. I don't think.
Well,
This is
I'm
just
just
a
making the
fence.
comment because if you fence this off, then you don't have that after there. That's why I was thinking.
Right.
I think I'd like to not have that.
Right. I think that doesn't need to be there.
I think for safety, this path being gone would be helpful.
And I would agree with you that I do think this should be extended.
Right.
Portion, I don't agree with the location of the shoot. I think the shoots are far right at one end. I mean, I've been to many
Right.
rodeos and that's just
Sure.
my opinion. I mean, yes, I liked them when they were right there, but
Right.
they just made more sense.
They're
you know,
bucking
being
straight
at that
after
end.
him, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, gosh, you get this wide view of them bucket, but I think moving this fence back. You know, that's probably 10, 15 feet,
Yeah.
whatever.
Still have a lot of
Actually,
space in
about
there.
60 feet from
Yeah,
here to here.
there's a lot
Yeah,
of-
so I think that would increase, increase the vision of the people in the grandstands,
Right.
right? It's gonna kind of close that off to where that's not the, horses running through there and stuff. We can put some type of fencing, whatever to keep a
Yeah.
barrier to keep those horses
Sure.
out.
Yeah.
And let people gather.
These bucky shoots aren't relatively solid.
Yeah,
We can talk about extending the alleyways
sure,
and moving up closer to the people, because all the action with a team rope
right.
or this is right there in the center. Which that's what
It's ruined your face.
Yeah. And the only other thing is I wonder about, this is good, I think, as well as anything that people are gonna need to warm their horses up, and this will work just fine.
And we can put little grandstands around,
You-
around.
Yeah, sure. Got temporary bleachers.
Yeah.
And you'd also want to, if this is gonna be a staging area, you might have some fencing out in here.
We
To
would.
block the public way.
We would.
Just,
Because like Derek talked about, we talked to a lot of people about what works for Duncan, for our community.
Right.
For what we do here. And this works good, because if you go to a junior rodeo, people want to be down here with their kids.
yeah.
They don't
Oh,
want
yeah.
to be up here in the grandstands. Those grandstands are empty.
Right.
So we put grandstands around here, that's where they're gonna be down here.
Like little pole bending right there,
Sure.
kids, stuff.
The fair, perfect for the big show right here, then you have people in the grandstands.
Right.
But anything else that we use them for, people are down here on there.
So do the chili cook-off.
One of the things, and this is not determined, just one of the discussion points we've had is that our current arena is pretty close to what you see most arenas, 150 seat, 150 seat this way, 250 feet that way.
There are some that are white. There are some that have different shapes. I've never roped a cow since the last thing I roped was a pig. That was my brother's fair pig and he got mad at me. So I'm not a roper. But I prefer people who know more about it, whether widening that arenas. One of the things we considered is if we go with what's there, we're not moving electric or pole or light or anything like that.
Right.
If we extend this, we're moving electric, we're refocusing the lights and so forth. An additional concern, or not concern, consideration, is we would like to build, provided we can get enough water, is a sprinkler system rather than running water trucks in there. So we'd still have a tractor work the dirt, but the water would be turn it on, turn it off. The further wide you get this, the harder it is to get it projected to the middle of your arena. Is that a deciding factor? No, I think it's a factor, but it's not, it kills an idea or creates an idea. Those are some things we've thought about. But as we look about our own local users, leaving this more or less intact seems like the best idea. Tweaks, certainly we can make tweaks, whether that's bringing these chutes out further, whether that's, we've taught a lot in our internal working group about this space. It unnaturally sort of separates the crowd from the event. It creates a natural path where people going back through here that we frankly, I love it. If there are horses here, or I'd rather not be spectators either from a liability point of view. Right.
But I would like for them to be there if there were barriers, keeping,
Correct.
horses out of that area.
So for example, if you have a junior rodeo, you can have people bringing their trailers back to here, and you're gonna have parents and kids here, there, and we're good with that. That makes sense.
We've been blocking these, see those barricades right there?
Yeah.
That's blocked off, and then you see those little white deals right there, that's also blocked off. And the people can still come in.
Chain link fence.
And it works, better sometimes, not as well other times.
Chain or something with the pedestrian access.
Yeah, those are gonna have to be fences if it's gonna be.
And keep in mind too, that the college rodeo.
Yeah.
I think the longer we go, the more we're looking at this being the main. Right?
I agree.
Rather than reinventing that whole.
Yeah.
The dirt is there.
There's there. The lights are good.
But I like the fact that putting in temporary, not maybe not temporary, but for the interim, temporary grandstands or something that are lower than.
So you can still see it from
You
here.
can still see from the grandstand, but others can sit, in there. If it was cost effective, I would, only because, the attentiveness, and that I would want this side to match the shape of this side, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, so symmetry.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah, but.
Don't mess up
Our goal
that.
is for our junior rodeo kids, having the pole bending, the flag raising stuff, we can cut our time in half and get them out of there by 9 o'clock instead of 12 o'clock at night. With this being here, and for the larger events with the college rodeos and everything, during the calf roping, the calf ropers can warm up in here, they come to the staging area, they come right in, they do their thing, they come out the back end. When the barrel racing starts, the barrel racers can warm up their horses in here, get them, stretched out real good, they call their name, they come to the staging area, so that's right.
Is that the open shoot right now?
It is.
Yeah.
Glued up?
It is. That's
Am I still on the same?
Yeah, but if we can move that over.
That's exactly one of the things I thought would be great.
Derek remember that earlier.
Yeah, he did, and I
Moving it really to right there, and then give.
Can you make sure Reed remembers that?
And then we designed it so the participants are coming in this way instead of going in and backing their horse up. That's something we've seen on several arenas. We looked at, the one I looked at Central Arizona College, they've got it set up. It's kind of a bay. It's not even a fenced in area. The horse comes in from the back, and then they, that way you're not.
But you gotta have a box,
You have a box.
You have to buy back
But
into
you
the box.
enter from the back instead of going in front and backing into the box.
So maybe it's partially open, so
Mhm.
it's like a
Exactly.
L and then it's open over here, so they ride in here, but you gotta back into that box.
That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. And
You
you
put a lot of time, I think.
you were saying an entry to this side for the.
Barrel
Barrel
race.
race.
Yeah, and this is another area you really wanna
Keep some people out of that barrel.
Those
Those things will run over you. And I mean, no.
And that's what we learned from a couple of folks, is because you give them at least 16 feet to run through. And you make it clear that you can run through that. And they go,
And eat on the other side of this gate, a lot of red tag. Yeah, those horses are about semi, they're more than semi. So if you have too many people wandering around there, it's what people.
They're running 50 miles an hour out that.
Yeah.
You know.
the coach from CAC told me
Yeah.
about an arena somewhere in New Mexico where they put the bar right here by the for the barrel wrestling.
Oh, right.
You know, our cowboys, who'd already had a couple and was carrying a couple more, he just got run over by a barrel racing.
Yeah.
And that horse was head up because she was rearing her back and she just hit her about 30 miles an hour. So that's, the lawyer in me says, how do we minimize that? And you're right, Jim, you know, this area being fenced off so this is a staging area,
Say, yeah,
not a spectator
not a
area.
place to wander
Your
around.
staging area is almost gonna have to be designated with signs too.
Well, and
Staging
big
area.
events, yes.
Yeah.
Junior rodeo, I'm not as worried about it because it's families doing that
Right.
kind of stuff.
And I think during that, you know, it's what, 15 minutes or something of that barrel racing portion of when that, you know, happening during the rodeo, then you have
You're clear.
people over here to make sure that it's clear, you know.
Yeah,
One of the things that they talked about, the people who design these things say, the biggest thing that will make your rodeo effective is, do you have your pins set up in a way that you manage your stock with as little effort as possible? And then you do the same thing, you have your two hands who are helping, you're running barrels, and you clear this area. And so part of the design of that, the reason we moved the bucking chutes out of here, one, they were made with cutting edges, and they tended to cut horses and poles.
yeah.
But this has made our stock moving tremendously easier, because they used to come up here, do a 90, come around out here, now they just run right into the crow's nest. And so moving stock has been a huge advantage of the current setup.
Cattle would fall up here.
Oh, yeah.
There,
Oh, that's it.
there.
Down the corner.
Yeah.
That's another plus with the.
Oh, yeah.
being out of
Oh,
there.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, any other questions? What I'm hearing right now is, go ahead.
What we're hearing now is this basically stays the same. Be extended out a little bit so that Ron has symmetry.
If it makes sense, you know, with those power lines.
Yeah, this I think was a great idea.
Yeah.
We have some closure here. Some hard barriers, perhaps a chain link fence or whatever, there's a warm up. We keep this here. And just approximate.
Right.
So that we have safety when these are coming down, right? And then we still have our main center of attention in this. But the whole time I have not personally wanted to reinvent all of this.
No.
This to me is tradition. This has been around for 100 years. You don't want to mess with it.
No. Very fair. No, sure. Because if you do extend this, you're gonna have to do power.
Yeah, it might not be cost effective.
Yeah.
Well, and we can look at that, moving two poles is easier than moving
Yeah.
12 or 16, where we got it there.
Perhaps here, if we're not going to extend this, putting these in as chain link type fences and having
Market rate.
these so they could have swinging gates. So people could come in and out.
Yeah.
If you do have
Or
something
shut it
going
off
on,
if we
if
need
you do have
to.
something going on that's dangerous, then you just close it.
Yeah, in the years come, if you think you need bigger. This is easy to do, you just move this out.
Because I was talking and visiting with our manager of engineering. This is all. We can work on this.
Yeah.
Get something going,
Yeah,
then we can make tweaks later too.
exactly.
I don't think we're ever, I think we could talk for the next 50 years.
Oh, yeah.
And never get a perfect one.
Right. So but it's all
We need to take that step.
Move in the right direction.
moving, exactly, yeah.
You're gonna try to put a dry camp in.
Well, one of the areas that we talked about is that, we'll probably eventually remove these stall buildings. They're solid, but they're also right in the middle of the way.
Yeah.
So dry camping in this area would still be the priority, where it currently is designated. But if we take these out, this opens up both parking as well as the ability to move around.
Right.
And we would build, I keep calling them panel or timber, they're not temporary, but essentially build stalls. Modular, if you will. So
Yeah.
you have 2 pins on either side of the common fence and an area that shades about half the fence. And we can build those out. I think, you've heard me use the analogy before, when you build a mall, you put the Dillards and the Macy's in first, and then you put the other stuff. Well, the horse stalls are the other stuff. But if we settle on this and this, make the horse stalls go here, or whatever. But I think these eventually go away because they're just smack.
These
dab-
two allow this whole area to be a dead zone. If you remove these, it opens up this whole area.
It does.
I personally, I would think it goes up with that.
And I wish we could keep them.
All the
I'd like to
Well,
keep them, but it's
but
a
if you have
natural,
their stalls, they may be just as happy.
it'd be a natural barricade, it's a natural barricade for nobody wanting.
In fact, a lot of people don't realize it's that.
And with this here, we want this to become a high activity.
Oh, absolutely.
It's all of these are operational,
Yeah.
some of them.
Yeah, you're gonna.
We've taken down the ones that were falling.
Oh, you did, okay.
But they get utilization sometimes and other times not at all.
And over here is a dead zone too, so with these gone, I think with this road rerouted. Us to utilize that area much. more.
Yeah, because it's really.
And remember on the dry camp, you need space between.
We also need space between for rodeo rates. One of the things we talked about, some of those things unload on the side. And even if they don't unload on the side, they need enough space to tie their horse up to the trailer.
They put pins up there.
They often carry their own pins. You'll see, when I asked the rodeo coach there at CAC, he said, basically you want a double space. So if you need a 12-foot space for the trailer, count on another 12 feet for the space in between. We can encourage some of that better use by how we mark off parking. And what we found with college rodeo is really kind of remarkable. First couple of kids came in and parked, rest of them lined up right up perfectly. Yeah. We also discovered, I know we showed, some of you seen the aerial video. We took an aerial video while the track was still there, and everybody, they parked like a bunch of drunk sailors in here, no offense to somebody telling us, but they're every which way from Sunday.
Because you're a sailor.
He's an Indian. When we removed this, they started lining up, and so, you get a couple of them lined up right, the rest tend to line up
Yeah.
likewise.
Yeah, but I think we need to mandate that, as
You
as
mark
they're
it?
coming in, we say, you park here.
We put a fellow out there with a flashlight or a flag and say, pull in here, pull in here.
Just like in any events.
But the aerial showed us that even with those college roads, if you were on the ground, it looked like it was just packed to the gills.
Yeah.
From up 200 feet in the air, you realize there was a lot of wasted space, and there was parking could be handled much more efficiently than it appears while you're on the ground. But those are things we've been talking about as well. How do we manage that? How do we encourage? For the junior rodeo, we're getting more and more participants, but there's enough space, they can still park wherever, however they want, and we've got space. This is all parking. We're gonna square this off. So we got plenty of parking. And we would, for example, a large event, this would be our college rodeo people, not just general parking. This would be a general parking over here. So we can manage that much better.
Now, this is potential for additional phases.
If there's something else we envision 5, 10 years down the road.
I don't think 3 million is gonna go with that. Lars. We want-
No.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We wanna get where we wanna get what we have.
Yes, yeah, that's my thought, is try to get
But if we could save.
something that we can build
That
on.
would be a big savings.
Yeah, if we don't reorient the arena and we stick with what we mostly got, we've saved a bunch of money.
This
This,
is basically fencing, right? And there's
we think, and what we'll
Ground
do is, there are people who panel, and so the builder will put in posts and then weld their panels. 25K is our ballpark right now to build this. We could probably be done in a couple of weeks, once we get started.
Get more brothers.
More brother, before we think about it, we're triple
My
brother.
directive is we want quality. And we want it safe, and we want the lights.
Right.
Yes,
And
this
in a-
has
and in a way where it can be expanded upon without having to redo the whole thing.
We don't want the
15, 20 years. Right.
We don't want the cheapest thing,
No,
because that won't last.
no.
we've talked many times, this is a multiple generation. In fact, everybody around the table right now will not be here. for
Will not be
multiple
here.
Times to utilize.
If I followed Dad's footsteps.
That's right. They will be here, the rest of us may not. Let's
Was
shift.
everybody pretty good with this?
Are you guys, you're good with this? Dave, are you good with these?
I'm good.
Okay.
I want to hear our clients.
Try to be here till.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I don't want, I didn't want to look at your rate.
I think we're good.
I don't want to, but I got-
We're good. Skills.
And
I'm skeptical about this.
Gail's gonna pass that on to her 40 calls.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm.
Yeah, no, I think
The
we're.
one other concern that people have had is when the carnival is here, I can hear the announcer. So we need to either approve it or just leave the carnival back a little bit. I mean, it was.
Speakers here.
It was,
Yeah.
it was to the point where we.
I think someday in the future, when the whole project's done, we can discuss having the carnival out here.
Well, and one of the things that,
That's fine. You know, it usually be down here.
and there were reasons to move, primarily for safety. We had a lighted area with, lots of kids running back and forth. However, those are the shops less than Dillard. I think we get the Dillards and the Macy's right.
Yeah.
Talk about speakers, we can talk about carnival locations.
Right.
And fill those in.
But the only change that's been made in recent years is that the carnival moved in and I could not hear it speak.
That's easy.
Anybody in the road.
That's only 1 week a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, we could.
Hopefully not.
On the grand.
We'll get more use out of it.
Yes, like we have a ball field.
Yeah, I like to see
Speakers.
speakers.
Speakers in the back.
What we did was build a sound system.
Yeah, I like to see it.
Exactly.
Let's shift our focus to the other area. You recall that originally we had the playground area in the north four quadrant and 3 ball fields. Primarily in response to, Mr. Wern's constituent interaction. It's been suggested that rather than a 3rd ball field, that we put a soccer field in. The reason we selected this location is that these 2 fields remain. One will be primary softball, one will be primary little league. And then we simply move, change quadrants for the playground. The location of these are just placeholders. They're not where we intended to. In fact, what we talked about is to focus those amenities that would be focused on little kids closer to the center. So if mom's watching a ball game, the little kids on the playground here.
And that's exactly what happens here.
Correct. Correct. And so out here, maybe this is where we have the sand volleyball, the pickleball court, where you have more adult activities, concentric into younger activities. The exact locations, however, we haven't nailed down. We would put a hard barrier, so we don't have kids. What is that currently? That is a tool shed. Yep.
That's gone.
We would put a hard barrier, so we don't have kids wandering from the play area into the roadway. That's a tool shed. It's gone. So, but essentially, this gives us the same alleyways, the same distances. One of the advantages of this is that you will tend to have more kids early in the program. So T-ball, coach pitch, you can have 1, 2, 3, 4 for the line. You can have 8, little ball fields for the T-ball folks. They don't need a full size thing. This becomes a multiple purpose. We label it as soccer, but you can run soccer this
I want
way.
this to be labeled as multi-purpose. You can have a family
Correct.
reunion here, you can have a soccer game, you can have a football game.
You can
You can
sling
have-
water balloons with a launcher. Whatever.
You can have whatever you want here, reservations can be made for an activity here for the whole facility.
We also
This is not
anticipate
relegated just to soccer.
pavilions with tables in and around the play area, so families could gather.
And we need stands here, because where does the baseball field, where do you watch from?
Yeah, you watch down the line.
You watch down the line. Yeah. I mean,
There's actually, for community parks, we've gotten mixed feedback. Some like some stands, some like to bring their own lawn chairs. And I think there's enough space you can provide for both. We're not gonna like to seat 300 people on each field. But,
What if you 50 to 100?
and those temporary bleachers that we currently move to different locations, those can easily be staged along there.
Yeah, you put separation in the middle, that way they can bring it out there, sit in between.
Correct.
the problem the T-ball people have is they're really big guys. And in the old field, they had to walk through this parking lot Next to the highway.
So the restrooms, concession, storage.
All your amenities will be centered.
But we also anticipate keeping this septic tank active and we build the restrooms around, it, so we've got additional capacity here, in addition to the restroom back behind the arena. So we would increase our facilities as opposed to diminish them. Parking would also increase, but it would be segregated parking so that we're not, running out there. What we don't want is to have kids having to cross the road, particularly on busy events like a fair. I don't want to have a parking here, run over here. Yeah. So we have parking in this area that would service this part of the. Yes, something very much like that. The road, as you see, will come in, and this area has now been cleared, all except a couple of these two containers, and very few stuff, but this all been cleared. But this road now can be rerouted because we're not covering that third field. So this swap out here.
There could be parking along.
There absolutely.
This would prevent the 2-year-olds from getting.
Yeah, correct.
I mean, you're gonna get that fair time. Run over here.
Yeah.
But.
There will be.
You just go 5 miles in.
But it's, and obviously during a big event, we're gonna have more people out there so that traffic stays slow, so that people know where they go. But one of the things Reed has alerted us to early on is if the better we handle traffic in the design, the better the whole thing works. That's why we've talked about bringing everybody in here during the fair. Everybody goes out there during the fair. They can go in here and park where they need to park, but you're leaving the park that way. And that way we can line people up as they're coming in along our own road, Fairgrounds Road, and not on our Highway 75. This,
With this road, you take that and.
we want to maintain this entrance, but it would be blocked off as a utility, our people only type of entrance.
And you're gonna put the entrance here.
This would be the main entrance or exit, as you will.
No, we bring livestock in here.
Well, when you're bringing livestock in, this is easy to do.
Yeah.
Once the event is started, this becomes an exit only.
Yes, that's still here.
Correct. For your day-to-day, Tuesday afternoon, take kids to park, we don't care where they come in. But in terms of managing the traffic during a larger event, in one way, out another. Yeah, that would all be. Some hard features, we can't move this well, we can't move this well. We're looking at this area for a well, and we have it here. More than once. This is a hard fixture, this is the current well, and right now. That is a restroom.
Restroom.
Yeah, that's the restroom.
That's what it's called.
That restroom, okay, so leave that way to the road.
Yeah, I mean, the road is easy to move around once we get the main eater store set. I guess my question is, are you okay if we shift that third field to a soccer field? We won't tell Richard till later.
Or a multi-purpose
That's
field.
what they.
Multi-purpose field. Multi-purpose activity.
Now, what we've done with the dirt here, I say we like I've done it, I haven't done a thing. But the dirt that's been moved from this area, is now it's stockpiled here. If you drive by there, you're gonna see a mountain of dirt right there. We intend to use that to level these fields in this area. The current field that's right here is full of goat heads. We will scrape it, we'll level it, and then fill it with topsoil. So that we're in good shape to have a good standard grass. Now, there are a couple of things that we've looked at with the turf. They don't last as long as you hope. Awfully expensive. Maintaining grass fields is awfully expensive. If you want them good and you have good standard grass.
That's gonna be our hardest.
The maintenance on the whole thing.
We anticipate there will be an increased maintenance annual commitment to this. We know that. If we build this right, it still have minimal maintenance. That will have quite a bit. This is gonna be our challenge.
But if I start having 6 rodeos a year, that maintenance cost goes down because we're using.
We subsidize it with other users.
Yeah, and the same with having people over here renting it out for,
There are
other things and multi-use.
one of the things you get concerned about any public park, and Arizona has a specific carve out for this. You build a park, kids are gonna fall off monkey bars, those kinds of things. And In some states, every time that happens, the entity that owns the park gets sued. Arizona, if it is a public park, we can escape most liability. And so one of the questions we looked at was, do we treat this as a pay for play? Or do we treat this as a public park? Our liability goes down if we treat it as a public park. Now, if you go in there, you'll see these great big signs that say Western events have a national inherent danger to them, and they're all around. If you charge. For every, now you can charge, let's say the team roper guy comes in, we could charge an event fee, we can charge a, we already require liability insurance that they purchased. And then we essentially through contract require them to manage the liability, but if somebody gets hurt, we're gonna get sued anyway. So the question of how you raise money from something like this to help subsidize some of the cost is a legal question that we have not completely broached yet, and we don't need to at this point.
I say that's.
But that's a down the road type of question.
It's 2.8.
So in terms of building it out, would we love to have this have 6 big events a year? Absolutely. I can tell you, every time I drive home this time of year and it's after dark and I see the lights on, I know someone's roping down there, we're winning, because it's being used. If that field, a multi-purpose field, has kids playing on it, frisbee, soccer, anything, we're winning, because it's something, it's a focal point for the community, allows them to gather, allows them to, I still believe this will be the most used part of the entire place. Because you go, it's a nice one of those, it will constantly be populated. I would suggest we use a reservation system for tables and pavilions, it stops the fights. We can manage it, but I think people will go there, and so. With your direction, we will move forward on this design, we will stage it. We intend to keep this field available during the coming spring Little League season. So we will start on this stuff. But this, we would wait until after the Little League season.
Can I ask Mr. Marnus a question? If nothing happened to this at all, would we be prepared for the fair?
If nothing happened to it, like you mean if we don't work
We don't
on
do
it?
anything.
If it's the way it
The
is.
way it is.
I think it's good the way it is, yeah.
Second question, if nothing happens to it right now, are we ready for Little League?
No,
Yes, because that field will not be touched.
but we've still got T-ball that practice at the same time and use the same field. And they have more kids than Little League does.
But that's no different than we have right now.
It'll be the same.
Not that you have the other field, and that's the one that the T-balls use.
Yeah.
Yeah, you took that
So
one
this is
out.
gonna have to be
If that-
cleaned up in the next.
You need to do something before T-ball starts.
Well, even if we just mark out a diamond with chalk, we can manage that.
Yeah, and you gotta make sure they can get to that boundary. Yeah. That.
So this is gonna have to be-
Amanda walked away with the kid.
I just wanna make sure we're not postponing any seasons.
We're not.
We're making decisions, and that's what Derek's.
We intend to leave that untouched until that season is over. Will there be some impact? Yes, there will be some impact. When we build this, there's gonna be some impact. If we make changes, but we will minimize those impacts as best we can.
And everybody will see that progress.
We'll get more.
We will. As soon as we move some dirt, someone will have an opinion about why we moved it there, not there, and put it over there, not here, and.
I'm still mad at you taking out racetracks.
We understand. We understand.
Horses back.
You blame us.
Outlaw rodeo, we'll build a gerbil racing facility. I don't know. We have no idea. But things change over time, and I think this addresses our users now and for the foreseeable future.
That still gives us a lot of blank canvas to make improvements down the road.
We do. Yeah, we've got a great size campus, like we commented before, Grand County has a huge campus. And the distance between amenities it's a long walk. We've got a nice concise campus that we can work with. It's not too big, but we've got room to do some things.
I don't like this, because they took all the grandstands out, there's no covered grandstands.
There is, but you just see the wheat field and what used to be the horse racing track, that's it.
We take the
Yeah.
10x10s.
Yeah.
Short legs in the back, long legs in the front, make our own cover.
But unless there's other direction you'd like us to to work on. I think
I think we're at a great point.
we're gonna move that direction. Like, we understand where we're going, David? Sure. Austin, you haven't been over here, but. we'll figure out that tomorrow. Okay.
Well, they heard us feel clear,
Changing some fences.
doing multi-purpose rectangular field in lieu of a better ball field. All three of them.
Oh, yeah.
You're all good with that?
We didn't need 3 ball.
Okay.
We needed. Yeah, soccer's good, yeah.
I'm real happy that we're keeping the older people.
Very good.
Pass it all.
It's a good setup. Oh, yeah, no, I think it's.
We'll make these the best possible, but I do
Continue to work well.
they work better on the end, but we'll figure out how to make it better. And I think, yeah, getting that big gate right there.
Yeah.
Moving that over just a little bit. Yeah, I mean, that's probably like 10 feet.
I know we've got a guy who's thought about it a whole lot more than I thought I will the rest of my life, so. Okay, any other direction you'd like to give, any other questions we can answer for you?
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
You're done. We appreciate the direction.
Done. Lunch or what?
Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Well, and. Sure.
All right.
Take care.
Take care, Dale.
Thank you.
All right.
So who's.
Thank you very much.
Still.
Thank you for your time.
Well.
I think you're.
they've got.
Yeah.
They instantly, they don't, if you're not in position.
Oh, yeah. It's all.
All right, you can move into 14.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for all your input, and this meeting is adjourned.